Mhm. Yeah, so that was rather annoying. I'm sorry about that. YouTube crashed on me while I was doing that. Um, so you'll have to kind of just watch that last video, 20 minutes in, and it crashed. So I was kind of done, really. But I just wanted to just finish that off and say, here's another view of this beautiful crater, as they call it. Um, there are similarities with things that you see when you cut trees and so on, but I won't expand on that too much. I mean, again, it's like you want to see a hole at the center of the earth. Well, if you were a Meru person, then this could well be something like that, yeah. I mean, look at that. It's just insane. Um, okay, so I mean, wow. They say this is meant to be a volcano, right? And if it is a volcano, then how if you got this massive ridge around the outside? I'll go back to this. This ridging here you got around here cannot be the consequence of volcanic activity, right? It just doesn't make sense. Um, it just doesn't make sense. But this is a very large crater, and I don't know why I'm showing you this topographical map, but it's possible that if it was a tree, then it was felled in this direction here. But I won't spend too much time on that. So there you are. Is it possible that the Antarctic rim is the Earth is much smaller. This place that we're sort of currently corralled in is much smaller than we even imagine, even those that have been looking at flat Earth. Hey, Red Eye. How are you doing? Oh, I saw your message on Instagram. I actually don't look at. I have this account. I have an account on Instagram, but I haven't looked at it since pretty much almost since I set it up. It's just someone suggested to me I should start up an Instagram account because I'd get a lot more traction. And okay, maybe I might do, but I'm not. It was too much time. I don't have the time for it as well. So the only account I don't have Facebook. I only have a YouTube. Just because I cannot deal with all the traffic. I can't. I know I've got very little traffic, but it's still more time than I have thing for. But I appreciate the the mess or the friend request or whatever that they call it. I don't even know how to use Instagram, to be honest. I never really used it at all. But I just did a live that unfortunately YouTube cut. So I'm hoping it's a 20-minute live. I'm hoping that actually survived and it's up and running. If it's not, I'll do it again. I'll run through this all again. I won't do it all now because it's there and hopefully I don't need to repeat myself on it. But I am, just to kind of summarize, I'm saying that I've found a Mount Meru. Now, I was looking at Kilimanjaro as a potential, simply because I'd come across these people called the Meru people, right, who currently live 100 kilometers or less from the mountain itself, from Kilimanjaro. But hey, here's a Mount Meru, and it has a hole in the center, and it's black. It's like this dark lodestone. It's like this, it fits the bill. And let's go back here. If you are, this is Arusha National Park, Mount Kilimanjaro National Park, so they're right, they're neighbors, okay? And where am I now? Okay, I can't see it right now, but the Meru people are currently, apparently they live around the Mount Kenya, which is also just nearby here. I can't see it right now, but what I am suggesting is that for these people, if they lived around here hundreds of years ago, then their world or thousands of years ago, then their world would have been limited to this region of the world, right? And before perhaps my cats, before they sort of Lake Victoria, before they made their way north, as we call it, north to through to up the Nile into Egypt. Their world would have consisted of this space here, which includes the Serengeti National Park, the Great Rift Valley, and these mountains are named like, the place of the gods, or Kenya, it means, to some, means the place of the gods, and the resting place of the gods, and there's a bunch of really interesting references like that. So these Meru people, who have a mountain now I found here in Arusha called Mount Meru, if this was their habitat, that's not the right word to use, but if these folks were using this was their place, right, then everything that they describe sort of is on a grand scale, because I mean, there is, in the world, there's no mountain like Kilimanjaro, and this one's almost as impressive. The Arusha National Park, almost as impressive. So for them to say, they see this as this great big black lodestone, where the gods are from, and the creator, and that there is a hole at the center of the earth. This would have been their world. This would have been their entire world. The idea of other places outside of Africa would have been foreign to these folks, I suggest. So I'm putting that out there, and I'm saying that it means that where we go into the fjords up in Norway, Sweden, Scandinavia, that area, up in Canada, back up in Russia, these are places like Siberia. These are places that we don't go. Why? Because we're discouraged from going to those places. But the weather in those places is interesting, because they get super, super cold, but super, super dry. Boast about, oh yeah, we can go outside -30, -40, and it's not as cold as England. And that may well be the case, because you're getting the climate is absolutely changing as you get to the extremities of this place. When I say this place, I mean this world. And so, I'm saying that those places, Canada, up above Northern Europe, above Scandinavia and Norway and so on, are actually in the Antarctic ring, in the Antarctic Circle. And that is we're at the top of the Antarctic Circle, or the bottom of the Antarctic Circle, when we're in Europe, in Northern Europe, very Northern Europe. And there is no center above us. The center of the Earth might well be here. And we're almost on the equator, by the way. This isn't far from the equator. You're 1 or 2 degrees off the equator. Right now my pointer's on 3 degrees south. So, I mean, we're not far. So it's not a stretch to say that, we're not in the middle of the earth. And of course, many people know Africa is meant to be where everything sort of originates, And I'm not trying to suggest again that everybody was once African, black African. I'm not, that's not what I'm trying to say here. But in terms of these people, and when I say these people, I mean the Meru people's history and their oral tradition, which I read out yesterday in an earlier video. They pretty much, their oral tradition is kind of like the Old Testament. They're saying stuff that's like, wow, that, did the Old Testament originate from what these people were saying? Modern historians will tell you, no. The Jewish people came down this way and told them stuff, or they had encounters with Jewish people such that they took that stuff on. I'm gonna call bullshit on that for now anyway. And so, no. It might well be that the stories kind of made their way up the rivers and into Egypt, up the Nile and into Egypt. My whole map's upside down right now. I say upside down, I mean, the way we're told it is. Where's Egypt? There we are. So this little river here is apparently called the Nile. And sorry, my cat's pushing on my hand. You know, so we're not. Oh, there's a place called Metu over there. So sorry, man. This cat of mine, it just wants me to stroke her. There you go. There, I mean, I'm really excited, and Niven thankfully has taken, a few others have taken us on board and doing a little bit of deeper research, and I'm just putting this out there and hoping that others will will pick up on it. And come on, I'll do it. And yeah, all right. But you know, so others will pick up on it and think again. This means throwing out the sacred cows for the flat Earth, right? Like there's a North Pole, magnetic North Pole. And as I said in my other video, like, you know, if you think about it logically, actually, we know that compasses don't work on a ball. But if a compass was being attracted to the North Pole that was above Europe, then a compass would work more promptly, and magnets would be more, and metal would be more obviously attracted to that north lodestone the higher up, the further closer you got to the center. And the further away you got from it, then the less accurate, the less pull it would have. Because it's like we have, what's the inverse square law, you know, that we've discovered with light, is that for every, you know, the distance halves, whatever, the strength halves with the doubling of the distance. Well, the same is true with a magnet. My little boy plays with these trains, and the further he like these trains that are connected by magnets, and we have to be close for the magnet to work. And you know, once you pull a little bit away, the magnet's not gonna pull on that anymore. So if it was true that there was a strong magnet in the north, and it was so strong that it could pull on a compass 6, 7, 8,000 miles away at the bottom of Africa, then as you got to Finland and places like that, it would be ripping the metal out of your teeth. Yeah, you know, we would be able to do experiments that showed how the magnetic force was so much stronger in one place as opposed to another. So, my friends, I'm asking you to take this on board and think, shit, is it possible that actually the icy parts of our world, the very cold and chilly parts of our world, the strangely cold and chilly parts of our world, are actually the parts that are closest to the rim? And that if we're on a disk kind of thinking, right, then this central part where it's so warm, and that would apply to the other continents too, would be the most fertile. You know, if you had a greenhouse and you had your primary source of light in the center of the greenhouse, then the rim of the greenhouse would have the least growth and the least warmth. That makes absolute sense. And when you've lived in Africa, as I have, and then you stay in places like England and so on, you realize, you know, that the weather is rather unpleasant by comparison to these wonderful places in Africa. So, my friends, I am really trying to throw the cat amongst all pigeons here, and I offer to you Arusha National Park, which covers Mount Meru, a prominent volcano, something in the region of 4,500, 5,000 meters in height. And as I showed you with these pictures, it is, if you lived here 1,000 years ago, this would have been the most incredible sight. It still is today, of course, but you show me something from the North Pole, you can't, but you show me something from the North Pole that looks anything like this. Oh, I can't even imagine anything like this there now. You know, I think we've been sold a crock of shit, actually, let me be blunt, by the powers that be, and all these people that are pushing, and I don't mean you and me, because I've been buying into this myself, but we were all given the new flat Earth 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. And of course, the Flat Earth Society are more than happy to have us say, oh, it's a snow globe, with the center of the snow globe over the magnetic North Pole. I'm starting to call bollocks on that. And I hope, I mean, I may be wrong. Of course, I'm happy to accept that. I've been wrong about so much along this route. But I'm going to throw that out there and say, hey, man, let's stop thinking of this in the way that our government. I don't have a government. I am my own controller of my own mind. But, let's stop thinking about this in the way that we've been given. Okay, because this may very well be the center of our world, and any I don't have a dog in the race as to whether or not there's a firmament that is a dome, or we are on a planar system that has a firmament that's planar up until a point. That's not really something that I can kind of answer, and I don't think any of us are ever going to necessarily be able to answer that. But wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it be just appropriate, normal for us to all be like chasing after the South, going, oh, got to get to the Antarctic, or you got to get to the North Pole, when in fact, home might be right here. This might well be where the center is, and the Mount of the Gods. Now, like as I said in the other video, there are these super trees or these super mountains on all continents, and these were family trees. So, there'll be a family tree for the Europe and Asia, and of course Uhuru or Uluru, the red rock in Australia. So this is not the only one. But the story of our world, I think, originates here. And go and look into these people, yeah, the Meru people, because their oral history is fascinating, fascinating. Okay, and yeah, I mean, of course, it's such a fertile part of the world, but so messed up, and it's been messed up on purpose. All right. Oh, I had the chat switched off, but I see a few people did come on here. What happened there? Hi, Gracie. Yeah, I was telling you back when I noticed that you had with the north to south orientation on. You go, yeah. Well, we live in an upside down world, so we've always assumed that north is to the top, and of course this is all bollocks. This whole bull thing that people love so much is all bollocks. So the idea that our compasses point to a thing, and they've painted that red and said N, that's north. Well, how hard would it be, given the extent of the deception? How hard would it be to have that all upside down? And but the center, so it does. I mean, and this is something that I can't answer myself, but I would love to get other people to share their thoughts on it. And that is that, the way that the compass works on a double torus or triple torus system is not, more than likely not going to be, because there's some magnetic stone. Okay, I think we've been brainwashed with that bollocks too, by the way. Okay. Hi, Conrado. Nice to see you, friend. Hi, Astro, and Effie Viking. Skull. So that's, yeah. I mean, if I don't know if you are Scandinavian, but that skull reference makes me think of Denmark. And when you look at our maps and you look at what's north, you ask yourself the question: what's 500 miles north of Sweden? And because people in Sweden say, oh wow, if you're just like 300-400 miles of north of Stockholm, they're like, oh, you're up in Lapland, you're up in the Laps. What is above the Lapland? What is above that? it's all becomes mystery and uncertain, and I think that it becomes colder, and you're actually into the Antarctic ring, what we call the Antarctic ring. Okay. I'll just run through some of these chats. Yeah, what else? Black Hat. Yeah, Black Hat. Yeah. They say life started in Africa. Well, I mean, our history, our current history may have started in Africa, and I can't answer the question about how the different color groups and so on come, and I don't really want to get into that. I mean, it's an interesting conversation, but I don't know that this necessarily answers that. And I think that if there are these family trees, then they exist in Europe as well. And while I'm thinking about that, have you ever seen the Martin Kenny? It's not only his idea, of course, not his idea, but he's popularized the idea that there are these rings of, let's say, these rings where you have like an inner ring, and then a secondary ring, and a tertiary ring, and even a fourth ring, right? If that's kind of true, or there's truth in that, then what if this is the inner ring, and that when he describes there being, or his model describes there being sort of bad lands or difficult lands that you can't traverse, then perhaps it's something like this. Or perhaps even, and my preferred theory on that is that that these mountain ranges here, the Himalayan mountain ranges, for example, the Alps, are actually another border that we've managed to cross. So did people, the white-skinned people like me, make their way over some kind of barrier? And so when he talks about there being these epochs and times of which people can eventually move between these, maybe we've already done that. Maybe we've already moved between these rings. I mean, I'm just spitballing here ideas, but when you go up here, beyond here in the world, there's nothing. What is just nothingness, right? So I'm suggesting to you, my friends, that the of Antarctica is actually this. Now, obviously, in this ball shape, it doesn't make sense. You have to open this all up. I sent this idea over to Antonio Subratz today I don't know whether he's gonna want to comment on this, because it does really test some of our willingness to kind of revisit everything we know. But yeah, I mean, this could be the center of the original world, and then things have gone from there. Just a thought. There's quite a lot of comments here. Maybe I should just check a few. Exposed Liar says, I think the layout is what is in the UN flag. Yeah, I mean, the layout, I wouldn't disagree with you. Maybe I'll just pull that up just to kind of see where UN flag, and just see how this meets with what I'm saying. Okay, because for me, there's truth in plain sight, right? And when you look at this, okay, I am suggesting that all you need to do in the main is to kind of move the center of the target to Mount Meru. Not that non-existent black hole that everybody's going, yeah, it's got to be there, let's have a tour, let's go and find out what's there, or let's go and find out what's there. No, what if it's there, and that the outer, so once you move this target down, you all of a sudden, okay, this I would need redepicting, but it means that these areas here become sort of your outer rim, this no-go area. These Canada and so on, become like an outer ring. But look, we've all been given this. We've all been given this, and we've all for the last few years gone, shit. This is what it is. This is what it is. So, I'm not gonna hold it against anyone for kind of saying, well, I like the one that the government have kind of slipped us. Because if you don't know that the rollout of the flat Earth big style is a military operation, if you don't know that, we've been squabbling over why are they rolling it out and so on. If they are rolling it out, why are they rolling it? Well, they're rolling it out because they're rolling out disinfo. It's not hard. That's the way it works. Hi, Mr. Mensa. No spin, no bend. Absolutely, friend. Yeah, history is misconstrued since our great grandparents. I think that it's way before our great grandparents. I used to go back as far as that, but really for them to have fiddled with all ancient cultures and so on, because there's very few people. Pardon me. There's very few cultures or countries or whatever that have not countries. People that have any kind of truth about them, and so some of the oral histories of those simpler folk who had only a small world to live in, and I'll bring you back to this. Those people who perhaps lived in this area here, Arusha, which is Meru. For them, this would have been a huge distance to travel. This would have been a massive amount of land. This would have been the whole world to them. I mean, maybe arguably they had a little route out into it through here, but this was it. And I mean, historians, and I don't know whether this is true, but historians will tell you that there was nobody down here prior to the Dutch arriving in the 1600s. Again, that's not true, is it? Because we know there's star forts and so on down here. But if you go back a few thousand years to the time of, supposed time of Christ, then I would argue that this would have seemed like the whole world. And if you traveled this way, it was just ocean, desert, and desert, so it's very possible that people thought this was the entire world. And if you look at the oral history of these people, and you start to think, sheesh, what do they know? And of course, all of these white lines on this fake globe are drawn by who? It's the empire has drawn all these lines. So all of these lines, all of these countries have been set up by the establishment, the very same Phoenician establishment that is in power today. Okay, so Exposed Lies says, I think the land is all the same age. It has just been raped and pillaged. Okay. Different times of history. Australia being the last continent to be raped and pillaged. Well, I mean, that's interesting. I'm at a loss to be sure about that because of anything. Because it's like some people will say, oh, okay, some particularly black folks will say, oh, we black folks have been slaves for 400 years. Well, according to the white man's history, right? So I don't know that you can take that as at face value. I don't know that any of us have not been slaves in the last 400 years. Other than those that run the shop. So no, I don't know that. I have this other interesting theory: is that if this is the center, then that the sun is most potent at the center, then perhaps nature would have ensured that the darkest skinned people lived in the center and the lighter skinned people lived furthest from the center. So that makes me wonder about the whole. Is it possible that there were always white people down here, whiter people, lighter skinned people, and always darker skinned people in the middle? Just trying to keep the mind open on all these things. Because again, any preconceived ideas that we have are not really of our own true knowledge. Our great grandparents, of course, were illiterate. Go back 200, 300, 400 years. Apparently, we were all illiterate. So whose history and the oral histories have been robbed from people, and I would suggest probably hardest from the Europeans. I mean, they are the most cucked, beaten down group probably, of all. Like obviously when you look at the Aboriginal people in Australia, they will say, no, we're in a bad state now, and so on, and absolutely hard to disagree with that. However, the Europeans probably were in a very bad state 1,000 years ago after they had their, they were, bashed over the head. And then in the time since then, the Europeans have sort of fallen in line, gotten themselves into a suit and tie, and gone on with sort of enslaving ourselves. So, no, I don't take favorites on the history that I was taught or the ideas that I have. Okay, so thank you, Gracie. Yeah, this, the idea that what's interesting for me about, like, let me just quickly pull this up while I've got your attention. Fjords, right? Let's type in fjords, and see what comes up. There are many fjords on the coast of Alaska, British Columbia, Chile, Greenland, Iceland. I mean, I haven't looked this up before now, but this is New Zealand. And what I said in my first video is these places: Newfoundland, Scotland. I mean, when you go all the way up in the very high islands of Scotland, Norway. Let's look at some images of fjords. Wow, absolutely beautiful. But I'm looking for something a little bit icier than that. Absolutely beautiful. Glaciers, fjords, and wildlife. I mean, you start to get a lot of very chilly conditions in these places. Very, very chilly. And the conditions, Arctic, northern Norway. Arctic, okay. So how can they call that Arctic in northern Norway when they're only at 60 odd degrees, 65 degrees north? I would hazard to you, my friends, that what we're starting to look at here is possibly the the Antarctic Rim. The waters of our Earth, we know, need to be contained. And we know that the further we get away from the center, the colder it appears to be. Look at that. And just look at that. Now let me just put in Canada, right? I mean, look at that. Baffin Island. I mean, you tell me that doesn't look like what we would expect, to see at the extremities of our world. Wow, doesn't that look like an old tree? Wow. Hey, so I'm just offering this as we take so much abuse from those who love to live on balls, but really, we may all be shooting ourselves in the foot by insisting that that this is the center of the Earth, or this is near the center, when this might be the rim. Because we don't really travel much further north than this before we get into what let me pull up the Mercator North Okay, the North Pole map in English. That's handy. So, just give me a second, I open this up. So, we were just in, I assume this is Canada here. Pull this down. Greenland, and so this will be Europe. This is Lapland, right? And this is as far as we go north. I'm not, this area here, I would suggest to you is Antarctica. Obviously, you've got to open this all up and turn it all around onto a sort of, the UN type round map. But that this may well all be your kind of Antarctic regions, and we can travel from here to here. We know that we can travel these ways, but there are some questions that I can't answer, some things that I'm uncertain about with that. But I'm just trying to stretch us a little bit here, So yeah, imagine that is actually the Antarctica. This is part of the Antarctic rim. It's very clever, and you've got to spend a little bit of time. Maybe draw it yourself, but you've got to spend a little bit of time. Hey, thanks, Tommy. Well, okay, I don't disagree with you, Tommy. Like the most important truth to me is spreading knowledge of the reoccurring catastrophe that so many of us are looking at. Yeah, I think that there's room for both, actually. What you just said now is almost like what the ball boys will say to me. What difference does it make? We got to worry about vaccines. We got to worry about chemtrails and Donald Trump. What difference does it make whether it's round or flat? Is what people will say, and people will say, as you just done, what difference really does it make if it's the traditional UN version of the flat Earth or it's all inverted? Well, I would suggest to you, my friend, that the reason why people are wanting to, board ships and go off to the North Pole, or go to the South Antarctic rim or whatever they think we're meant to be going to, is because we are sort of compelled to learn more about our world. And if I may go a little further and say that the catastrophes that are happening on our world are going to continue happening for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. Unfortunately, they're going to continue happening. When I started shouting about 9/11 and flat Earth and stuff, I thought that my little voice would make a huge difference and it would start to change the paradigm and so on. But really, it's not. And the game that's going on against us is, what is it they say? You wrestle not against the flesh and blood, but against principalities. And I think that is going to go on. And I think for the same reason, I would say to someone, I got involved in a few heated discussions today, actually, because on people, for the same reason, I would say that why if it didn't matter whether we lived on a ball or a flat Earth, then why would they go to the trouble of deceiving us? Why would they go to all the trouble? And it's true that Mount Meru is in Africa and not in some mystical place in the north, here, in this unnamed, massive swathe of space. If it didn't matter, why would they do it? So, I got shot down by Martin Kenny a few months ago, actually, because you know, yeah, I spent quite a lot of time. I exhausted a lot of energy, and lost pretty much all my friends and family, or rather pushed them away because I was insisting that they needed to know about chemtrails and about vaccines and about the dirt in the water. And it seems to me, hey, it seems to me that what I spent a lot of time putting my effort into that, and I still will try and make people aware of those things because I care and about humanity. I love humanity, for sure. However, we are intelligent minds, and everything that this system has done to us is to dumb us down such that we no longer care about where we live, if we're from a family tree, if we're from if we're from somewhere important and we're meant to know about that. They've done everything that they can to stop us from thinking about that. Hey, haven't they? And so I have capacity to, well, put it like this. I was talking about mud flood quite a while ago, about a year ago, and even on the Globe Live tour last year. If you know, I was on this tour last year with Harry and Jason for some days, not the tour obviously, but I'd go around and try and find little evidences of mud flood while I was doing that. So for me, those are fascinating subjects, and Tartaria, fascinating subject. But they also have the potential to be a distraction. And so I've been trying to still my mind and stay away from getting too deeply pulled into these things, because I think I know for sure that there were larger people, giant-like people, because I've seen buildings that we cannot build today, and that they were apportioned for a much larger person, for sure of that. And there's no doubt in my mind that there's many buildings that are under mud. There's no doubt in my mind. But I don't need to keep going around those houses. And so I still have an agile mind that is looking to say, fuck that. Fuck these people who have lied to us. I want to know the truth about this world that I live in, as much as is possible. I'm not going to, I'm not looking to break my mind over it, but I'm certainly not going to, I'm not going to stand out in the street every day and shout vaccines are causing autism. Because actually that's what they want me to do. It's also why I've kind of, I've taken my foot off the accelerator a little bit with the flat slapping, the flat activism, because I'll still go and do it for sure. You may even see me tomorrow in London doing it. But I think we're playing into their game, we've been seeded with this information, and beautiful minds, incredible brains are being exhausted on hunting around like fish in a net, trying to find these truths. And so for me, this feels like a right thing to do. I'm just simply trying to live my day, live my life in a way that feels honorable and righteous and good. And I could spend all my time rereading the Bible and trying to pick apart the various interpretations of this book or that. But this is what feels right for me. And heck, hey, just like the ball earth, flat earth, it definitely matters if this earth is flat and not a ball. And there's a huge reason for all that we know, all the reasons why they would have lied to us about that. And I know because you may not have heard me say this. If you have, sorry, but at 12, 13 years old, I could read flat earth into the Bible, but I was already caught up with science, so I was just willing to point at that and sneer at that and say, see how dumb those Bible boys were because they thought the earth was flat. That's what I would say to my preacher, right? And so it struck me at some point that they always knew that we were going to find out that the earth was flat. They always knew that technology would get to a point when humanity would find out the earth was flat. So why not seed us with disinformation for that very time? And I'll give you the UN map as my evidence that they put it plain in front. They keep putting out fantastic disinfo. So yeah, ball boys will go, no, of course that's not the flat. You know what I mean? That's not what they've done. And we'll go, yeah, that's what they've done. Now they've got us arguing over bullshit or disinfo on both scales, right? And there is a tsunami of illness coming down. You may not have heard me say this, but the only time I ever lost my cool doing activism was when some numbskull was insisting to me that cancer wasn't a problem in our world. Okay? That's the only time I've lost my cool and stepped over a line, because this toolbox was saying that cancer is not a problem. My words to him were, I was saying we are having a tsunami of cancer and sickness in our society. Oh, no, we're not. Okay, it was I think it was my father-in-law died a year ago. This week it was a year ago on my son's birthday. So he just died at the time of cancer, of chemotherapy actually. And we all know loads of people who have cancer, who are having cancer treatment, and who died of cancer. So it absolutely matters to me that these things are happening, but people aren't listening. And this tsunami of cancer is going to continue rolling over humanity until such time as humanity steps away from all the poison. Yeah? This system, toxifying, killing people through poisoning them and all this sort of stuff, is going to continue doing that. I wish it were otherwise, my friend. I wish it were otherwise. But it ain't. That's the unfortunate truth. Come down to Speaker's Corner with me. Come and have a look at all those people shouting and screaming about their own little hobby horse. They are not interested. They would much rather argue about their version of a religion than kind of get together and say, yes, something is, we are being intentionally genocided. They don't want to know that. So getting to the point, I think that the genocide of the humanity will continue. Unabated, it is only picking up pace. I wish it were not so, but in a way, it's going to have to happen in order for us to change. And if there's a God level, creator level event or events that are coming down to us, then they have to happen too. That's written, that is preordained. And if it's preordained, then our masters are trying to stop us from finding the truth. Our masters would rather fire a wrong direction, go, oh, we've found our way, this is the way, and in fact, it's just another dead-end rabbit hole that they've created for us. So you'll forgive me for being so long-winded on this point. But I think we owe it to ourselves to find out the truth as far as we can, as far as we're meant to. Okay, I hope that's useful. Live righteously, Tommy. Yeah, live righteously. No matter the outcome, we will live out of Islam. I mean, yeah, I think that's, I can't disagree with that. But you know what? There will be a preacher of any religion going, live righteously. That's all you need to do, and God will be happy. I'll let you work out the rest. Hey, Harry. How are you, my friend? John Smith Global lies in the house. John Smith Global, I am looking forward to seeing you again, my friend, and seeing you out there doing some of your special work. You are indeed a man who's made great waves in this movement of knowledge, and yeah, I'm not sure it always is the case that we're going to be doing flat Earth activism. I saw a Stinky Cash video earlier today where he'd gone out onto the beach to talk to some people, and the guy said, "Oh, you're a flat earther." I'm telling you, it wasn't like that in 2018. When we were out in 2018, Harry and all of the others, we kind of came out of the dark. People were just, what? Flat Earth? They weren't prepared for us, and so they didn't have kind of like a ready to go to kind of argument. Now it's different. People know, so many people know the flat Earth is a thing. The majority are like, it's a silly thing, but they know it's a thing. Some are angry that we're even talking about it, and many come with pre-prepared rebuttals to that. So it's going to mature, and it's going to grow. And I think that what I see with some channels who will remain nameless at this point is that there is a sort of, what can I call it, the McDonald's version of flat Earth, the Kentucky Fried Chicken, or the Coca-Cola version of flat Earth, the the Facebook version of flat Earth, which is, no, I'm not knocking on the Facebook flat Earth research people. That's not what I'm meaning. I'm meaning like it's just like a, hey, the Earth is flat, and that's all that matters. The Earth is flat. Well, of course, that's not all that matters. The Illuminati card game tells us that it's just one of many things that we need to know, and so is mud flood, and so is Tartaria. These are just things that we need to know, and they point to the deception that sits behind us. But people hear about mud flood, and they're still not kind of like, wow, there's something. Our governments are definitely lying to us. No, they'll still go and vote, these people. They'll still believe in Donald Trump. They'll still believe in Julian Assange. They'll still believe in QAnon. And this is all predictively programmed. This is all stuff that's been provided for us. So what I'm asking you to think about, friends, with this different model, a model where the center of our, if you can just take your dartboard and move the bullseye to Mount Meru in Africa, and then put the Arctic Rim around parts of Northern America and Russia and so on, touching down into New Zealand at the bottom or at the side or whatever. Same with South America. Then maybe we might be finding something that's for us to research, because I have to say, I think that although mud flood is obvious, and that the construction of the Tartarian type or the pre-Roman construction is phenomenal, and now you see it, it's so obvious. I think these are the obvious sort of rabbit holes that they always knew they were going to have to keep us busy. Those of us who weren't watching porn anymore, those of us who aren't watching Netflix anymore, and spending our time shopping or whatever it is, chasing whatever. They need to keep our minds busy. I'm really happy to have Harry in my chat room. That's a special moment for me. Yeah, you'll be back out very soon. Yes, well, I look forward to seeing you and your incredible, valuable contribution to all of this. But I'm imploring you, my friends, not to, that this flat Earth versus ball Earth fight is, and it is a fight. It's becoming like religious dogma. This group against that. And I saw a comment that I slipped past that someone made. We need to grow love, and I'm on that, man. That's what I'm. That's it. We do need to grow love. And in my lifetime, the most loving people that I've ever come across are those people from Africa who've had the least amount of Western capitalization. The most beautiful people that I've come across in my lifetime have typically been these simple people with very little to worry about. But so I want to get back towards that. I'm not trying to make my life more difficult and more complicated and so on. But neither am I going to go and sit back and go, oh, well, I found out the Earth is flat. What a genius. There's nothing more I need to know. Well, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. Mudflood is landslide. Okay, oddity. The problem I have with the landslide, yeah, I mean, I say that too, but sometimes you see mudflood on hills. There's mudflood towns where they've lost 6 foot, 3 foot of buildings, and they're high up on a hill. And that doesn't make sense. There's like this even, I know liquefaction was one of the first things I looked at, and did they sink? But if they sunk, you'd see unevenness. There's too much evenness in the levels. Sometimes you lose roofs, so you think, oh, did it? I want to share a story with you. A friend of mine who doesn't talk to me anymore. He's a pilot. He was best man at my wedding, in fact, and but he was in shipping before he was into piloting, and he one time they used to sail from South Africa to Europe. And one time he was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, this was his words, we're 3,000 miles, he said, from the Sahara Desert, and yet we were in a dust storm from the Sahara. And it was dust storm so thick they couldn't see, they couldn't see where they were going. Now, they're told that it's 3,000, that the dust is blowing 3,000 kilometers or whatever from the Sahara. That could be bullshit, right? But what's for sure is that he was in a dust storm. So imagine that dust storm got wet. Is it possible then that you have a settling of this dust that becomes a mud? And it breaks in roofs as well, because sometimes you lose the roofs too. That's just a theory, of course. Oddity, we lost a town. Sadly, we lost a town in South Africa when I was a child. Youngster growing up. There was a town, the name escapes me right now, but they had a mudslide, and it did overrun the school and some of the town. So I'm not saying that those things don't happen, but it just the way that happens is it tends to be like banked, and you see that too. Yes, you see that too. I'm not sure, but mudflood is a fascinating thing. And I've lived in a mudflood house in London. I didn't know it at the time. I lived in the basement, and now I know that whole area, Chelsea, Earl's Court, Kensington, is mudflood affected for sure. The whole of London, actually. They boast that parts of London are built on old London. You can go down into old parts of London beneath the streets. And of course, the River Thames has at its side, the River Thames has got 20-foot walls, holding it in. The river's all the way down below these 20-foot walls. So that, for me, the river cut its way back through the mud, washed the mud away. But they've had to put embankments up to keep the mud in, as it were. I'm enjoying this little chat, so thanks for stopping by. I do appreciate it. I was expecting this to be a short one. I'd ask you to go back to the one I made earlier. I'm hoping that YouTube didn't it bombed out, but I went in a little bit more depth as to this Mount Meru in Africa, right? And the Meru people, if you look into their history, it's like the Old Testament. I mean, their oral history is like the Old Testament was stolen from them, although modern historians will say it's that they are either from the Jewish thing or they had a lot of influence from the Jewish thing. So hi, Luke Kennedy. Thanks for hey Dick. Thanks for your contributions earlier. And while I'm saying that, Niven for his inspired work, he's sort of inspired me to go and open Google Earth. I hadn't opened Google Earth in many a year actually, so I went and opened that, and that's how I came and found that there is actually a Mount Meru, because I was saying it's Kilimanjaro because the Meru people live near Kilimanjaro. And Kilimanjaro is the world's highest freestanding mountain, also known as a roof of Africa. Okay, so thank you, and thanks for stopping by, guys. Nice to see Marilyn Wisby there. Yeah. Barnabas Nagy is quite a exposed liar talking about Barnabas Nagy. He's quite an impressive researcher, I have to say. I do admire his work, and if I had any money, I'd probably toss him a few bucks. He's always looking for a few bucks, aren't we all? I think one of the prerequisites to being one of these folks who can see some of these lies is that most of us didn't kind of buy into the system well enough that there's a lot of money in the flat Earth community, which is probably also preordained, pre-programmed, so yeah, but yeah, no, Barnabas Nagy's I might have sent him a video and said, would you maybe consider looking at this and see what you think. Because really, what I'm not looking to hold on to this. I want to put it out there and get people to rip shreds out of it. Someone asked me, how does what's it? There's a passage, isn't there, up in Alaska, between Alaska and Russia, and so on. There's things that I can't absolutely answer, like about my suggestion that those areas are inside the Antarctic rim or ring. I mean, we could be talking hundreds and hundreds of miles. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there is nothing else. It's like northern Canada, and then it's just Antarctica. No, there could be some ocean space. There could be land. There could be maybe not so much land, but certainly some distance to travel. It's not like let's not think of it in hard and fast terms. But one of the things I haven't worked out yet, and hopefully people will help me with this, is how would it work for Hawaii and Japan, that side? How would that work? But for me, the Pacific Ocean is part of the deception. I think when you look at either the flat Earth maps or the globe, the vastness of the Pacific Ocean doesn't really stack up, and I think that massive amount of ocean that ships never need to travel through, because they will always take a shortcut, or they'll the plane boys will use their Great Circle route, so that they never actually have to explore all of those spaces and areas. But that is one of the things I haven't really been able to settle in my own mind, is exactly how that would be. But one of the things that I thought possible, because this is obviously a deception of all the governments and everything, is that you could have like the northern Canada, where Sarah Palin comes from, Alaska, and she says, "Oh, I can see Russia." Well, that could be a clever bit of trickery there, and that could be that they've named a part there is land there that you can see, and you can sail between what's known as part of Russia and Canada, sorry, Alaska. But who's to say that they haven't got a tract of land that they've simply called Russia, and that if you were a Russian and you were flying between that port, that place, and Russia mainland, Moscow or whatever, that would be, on a flight that could answer some of these questions. So all I'm saying is that they could have easily named a piece of land part of Russia, even though it's not, because this idea that America and Russia are enemies, of course, we all know that that's bullshit. Right? That's just the propaganda to keep us thinking that they wouldn't be playing nice, they wouldn't be hiding secrets from us because they don't like each other. Let me see how far I need to go back. Canterbury. Oh, you're talking about Canterbury Roman Road? Yeah, liquefaction. Yeah. That. I mean, back to the mud flood. Yeah. Just. I mean, what's interesting is the heights are different, aren't they? You see places where they've lost half of a story, or half of a building, and then Barnabas and others are putting out stuff where there's 3 stories underground. And something I've been wanting to mention to people is that if you look at the power station, I think there's a Tartarian power station in London called Battersea Power Station. For the entire 25 years that I've lived in London, they were going to knock it down, weren't going to knock it down. It's not been in use for many a year. I don't know when it was last really actually in use, but they've been wanting to develop that area. It's very valuable real estate in London. And over the last 4 years, they've gone through extensive redevelopment of the area. They've left the power station intact. But when you look at the train that I sometimes get into London goes past the construction site, and you can look down into it. I have done for the last couple of years, and there's 6 stories below ground level. And they spent years just digging back down into that ground they say get to bedrock and so on. But it's fascinating to me that they spent all those years, 2 years or more, digging into that ground and creating, opening up that whole lot. So I would hazard that beneath there is another clue as to the amount of mud that has come into London. We have to acknowledge, guys, that if we think that there are no more trees on flat Earth, as New Earth put out, and that the mountains that we look at were somehow petrified through an electrical arcing process or something like that, then there are things beyond what we've ever been taught that are happening on this Earth. And this may well explain things like that. I mean, I'm willing to accept that even the Grand Canyon could have been caused in a single electrical arcing expression. The dendritic forms we see in those things hinted that. So for something to have come out of the sky, yeah, I mean, it's just, the mind boggles, and the possibilities are endless. It's very exciting, and we live in exciting times. And as I say, I wanted at the beginning of this to go, shit, we make this known, and then the world will change. Well, firstly, not very many people are interested, and secondly, even if the world was to find out overnight that we've been totally duped, the most of us are so sick, so far from our divine inner soul, that, and I include myself, I'm on a journey of recovery and remembering who and what I am. But I've been actively doing this now for a few years, and I've still got some journey to go. But when I look out there and I see my fellow human being out in the shopping centers and stuff, and they're not even in the shopping, it doesn't matter, you could be out in the farmlands, people are so far gone up the capitalist whatever, sort of avenue, that we are far past our best. We are far past our best. And I would love for it to turn around, and I would love for there to be a 2012, like all the people that are into the sort of new age type of where it's all going to turn around, there's going to be like a transformatory kind of moment, and then people are going to just wake up and got no ways. This system isn't going anywhere in a hurry, and if it did go away, then there would be mayhem. It would be worse than Mad Max from the Thunderdome. We don't know how to take care of ourselves. We don't know how to organize ourselves. Mark from Melbourne has a channel. You should look out at Mark from Melbourne. He has a channel. I was listening to something from him earlier, and it's right to say that we do need to organize ourselves. We do need to get together small groups and so on, and try and begin to take ourselves in a new direction. But we're not going to overturn the system. My friend Dave of the Zoom Truth fame, he and others want to call for some kind of revolution. And I hope I'm not talking out of turn, Dave. You may have changed your views on that by now. But the idea that we're going to storm the Bastille and change. I mean, these guys. This system is so powerful that and they've got all the plods on their side, haven't they? The police and the military. I'll share a quick story with you. When I did my book launch in South Africa, my commanding officer of my unit, who, when I was a 19-year-old kid, 18, 19-year-old kid doing my national service, there was this commandant, Ben Bock Smith is his name, and quaking in my boots kind of thing when you're 19 years old, and there's this commandant and what have you. Now, he came along to one of my book signing events, and that was I was like, hey. And he took my book. He said, "Can I take a copy? Have a copy of a book?" And he grabbed it and went away into a corner for about 15 minutes, and he was furiously paging through the book. And then he came back to me and with a smile on his face, "Hey, good." So I said, "What were you looking for?" He said, "No, just something. I was looking for something to see how you'd characterized a certain event." And he didn't talk about it at length. But since I realized that, the military, since I published the book, I found out about Flat Earth and a whole lot of other things. I realized that, the military campaigns are called theaters of war because I think they're staged for political reasons. But so I would write that book slightly differently, or put, the battles I endured. I wasn't making those up. When guys go to war and people are dying and they're hurling bombs and shooting at each other and so on, that shit's real. It's just the motivation behind what the war is fabricated, isn't it? But what he said to me at the time, I was impressed when he said this to me, because it made me feel like we weren't racist. He said, he went on to serve under the black, when South Africa became a black government, some years later, he went on to serve under the black government. And he said to me, like, for us, I'm a military man. It doesn't matter to me what the color of the government, we're there for the government. And it made me feel good at that time, because I thought, shit, they were just doing what they were asked to do by the government. But now I realize that that's actually hugely toxic, because just like the plods, the police, they're not, the stormtroopers that came through my front door looking for my plants last year. They're not thinking for themselves. They're not going, hey, this dude's just grown a few plants here, man. No big deal. We don't need to hassle him. And the same is true with the military. The military won't go, hey, these guys are calling out the government for having lied to us. So we should actually get behind these guys, because they're operating under truth and honesty and all that sort of stuff, not the bullshit of the Trump and the Theresa May and the lies and the lies and the lies. Have you guys seen what Donald Trump said in 2014, 2015 about vaccines and about how bad they were and about how they caused autism? Have you seen that? And then yesterday, the slimy turd has gone, oh, yeah, no, everyone has to have an MMR injection. And in America, they're going to get to a point where people have to produce their papers to show that they are up to date with their vaccines and stuff. I got offered a gig to transport some gold from Africa to from Africa to England, but I had to have vaccines to do it, so I stepped out of that ring. Guys, this idea that we could meet some kind of violence begets violence, and I'm not saying we should be turning the other cheek, because I want, with all of my heart, my soul, and my mind, to do whatever I can to make this world a better place, and to leave something better for my children than what I got, and to open the door for them to the potential for having a humanity that one day is in step with nature, is in tune with nature. If that's at all possible, then I will do what I can for that. But it won't include trying to beat these psychos at their own game. That's not going to work. They want that. Trust me, they want that. And they've got agents who are actively trying to encourage people to do that, I'm pretty sure. And if they're not agents, and they've just seeded us with this idea that we should be violent. So anyway, that was me. Hey, Markham Melbourne, you're there. So Markham Melbourne is in the chat, and I find him a very fascinating man, and well researched. I'm not sure we agree on everything, but that doesn't matter. Sub to his channel. He's only got 150, 100, 200 subscribers. He deserves to have a lot more than that. And he's got a really interesting website, which I went to have a look at. I haven't got around to signing up. Perhaps you could just leave a link, Mark, if you feel that's the appropriate thing to do. His website is all about, I don't know if it's your website, but this website is all about creating a network of people who are becoming independent in this way. Now, I'm not advocating for people to buy bits of land and all kind of go and live on those bits of land and so on. I'm not sure that necessarily works, and it can kind of smell a little bit cult-like, and we're all different, and we're all, so it's not necessary. That's not necessarily it. And of course, when we're buying land, we're buying it from the system. I don't have the answers, but I do think that we need to be looking at good ideas and sharing good ideas and networking with people. Because yes, as I forget the name of the channel was saying earlier on, we do need to do more than just fixate over the nature of this world, or rather where the center of the world is, or whatever. We need to look out. We do need to look after each other. We need to look out for each other best way we can. Let me see if there's a few more comments to say. There's 32 people. Can we get one more in so we can have 33? That's fantastic. I've been chatting for a long time. Well, C Oddity has asked me a very blunt question, and I like C Oddity, so I will answer this question, and that is, did I ever kill anyone for the leaders? My father-in-law did. So I never looked anyone in the eyes and shot them. But so, see, I was a crew commander of a 20-ton six-wheeler armored vehicle, and it has a driver and a gunner in the turret and a crew commander sitting next to the gunner. So my role was to tell the gunner where the targets were. It's a 90mm cannon, so it's a big cannon. I've got a shell here, actually. I can show you. Now, the troop carrier had the potential to carry 9 lads, infantry lads in the back. But because I was an armored corps trained guy, we didn't have any lads in the back. We had all the space in the back for ourselves to kind of sleep in at night and keep our kit and what have you. But we had a 90mm weapon and 2 7.62 machine guns. One that I had with me mounted on the turret. So if I'm out of the turret, I'm picking off targets, and then there's one coaxially mounted with the 90mm gun. That the gunner, my gunner's name was Herbert, or is Herbert, and so he has 2 pressure switches. The one is for the main cannon, and one is for the machine gun that he's got. The main cannon we have to load by hand. Every time you fire a round, you load it by hand. You put the breech comes out, the shell comes out, and then you load the next round in. So on a number of occasions, we had direct battles with the Angolan lads against the Angolans, who were in armored vehicles themselves, tanks and Russian tanks, T-55, T-56, T-62, and vehicles like the BTR and the BDRM. These are things you can look up. Also armored vehicles, tracked, some of them half-track type vehicles. And so most often we were fighting against guys who were dug into trenches. Angola is one of those countries that I think has had vast mud flood, by the way. I used to think of it as a desert with huge forests. It was weird. These beautiful green forests under beach sand. And now I look back and I was like, that's a mud flood, man. So digging trenches into that was very easy. We were always digging trenches because every day, whenever we stopped, we had to dig a trench because we were always being bombed by the Russian planes, the MiGs. And there's stories about that. I won't talk about the attacks on us in this conversation. However, there were days when we were firing everything we had at the trenches. So if people died in those cases, I wouldn't know about it. On other occasions, I gave orders to my gunner and I picked out hard targets, tanks, BDRMs, and we blew them up. They were shooting at us, we were shooting at them. So people died. On my side, not so many. On the other side, quite a lot, I think. On one day, on the 3rd of October in 1987, was what became known as the biggest tank battle in Africa since World War II. And I was on the front line of that all day on the 3rd of October. Yeah, from the morning until the evening. And by the end of the day, all 6 of my tires, these were massive tires. It used to take 3 people could not pick one of these tires up. They were huge tires. And they had like a run flat capability. And at the end of that day, my vehicle wasn't working anymore. It had been shot out. The radiator had taken damage, and all the tires were flat. And but that was like by the end of the day. So I didn't go in on the final push. But on the final push, the battalion, sorry, the brigade, known as I haven't thought about this for a while. I think it was the 40. Sure. Sorry, I can't remember this. It's 49th Brigade. Officially, by all historians' account, we destroyed a brigade on that day, on the 3rd of October. Now, a brigade is made up of 2,000 soldiers, all told. That's not how many people died. I'm not saying that for a second. I don't know that more than a few. I don't know how many died, but we would suggest that a few hundred died that day. And I was on the front line, and I actually won an award for bravery for that, my actions on that day, because fuck, my life was on the line. I mean, I had bombs landing on my vehicle, around my vehicle. Like I said, by the end of the day, I actually had to wait for a new vehicle because my vehicle was too badly damaged to be repaired in the field. I had to wait a few days for a new vehicle to come to me. I had to say goodbye to my vehicle that day. And of course, you come to love your vehicle because, you're living and dying in it, right? So, but I just pushed forward, man, and pushed forward. I was ahead of anyone else in my squadron on that day, as a matter of fact. And I, and people died. Yes, people died, and there are tanks still rusting there today that my gunner destroyed. Sometimes you'd see guys jump out of the vehicle, or the tank or whatever. You'd see guys run away from it, but you know what I mean. You're in the heat of battle, hey, and there's and shit goes down. So, but like I said at the start, I never looked anyone in the eyes and killed them. But people died as a consequence of what we did. There's no doubt about that. And I mean, I never chose the army. For those who are listening who don't know my story, I never chose the army. The army chose me. We all had to go, all the white boys had to go to do national service in South Africa. By law. That's why you don't get a birth certificate. That's why my baby boy doesn't have a birth certificate. They won't be able to call him up if they ever decide that. They won't be able to vaccinate him if they ever enforce it. Because he doesn't belong to the state. But I did. And I had to do national service. And I never chose to even go. I ended up in this unit called 61 Mechanized Battalion. It was based on the border of Namibia and Angola. Spent a year there, 3 months in Angola in the war. And I never chose it. I just got chosen for it. And actually, I thought it was all a bit of a lark. I didn't think it was, it was all just... And then I ended up in war. And it was life-changing. But then, guys, you know what? You come back from that. You've put your life on the line. You've lost people. You've seen people die around you, friends die around you. I took some shrapnel, but nothing serious. I had some shrapnel in my back, and they cut that out that same day, on the 3rd of October, actually. And in fact, the medic who cut it out, I know him. He's in London. Not in London, he's in England. Dion. But, when you come out of that, you get sent home. Like my last day of combat, and a few weeks later, I'm back in Civilian Street, and no one cares. No one's interested in you anymore, and the government certainly don't give a shit. And you just got to piece your life back together and go and go to university or go and get a job or whatever. And after that, I never felt like this world was this. I knew that there was something wrong with this world, and I never really wanted to participate. So I ended up working in a restaurant, and then in the gym business, and then as a doorman in a very rough, violent place in Cape Town, where there was guns popping off all the time. Not that I've ever used a gun, by the way, since then. The last time I fired a gun was at war in Angola. I mean, I'm not trying to knock people who use guns and use guns for sport and stuff like that. I'm not even in that discussion. But I know I'm putting some personal shit out here, and I know that there's some dickheads out there who would use this as some kind of fodder to knock me down. But the truth of the matter is, my friends, whether this sounds egoic or not, there's not many of us around now, and those that can be trusted, and I want to be one of those people that can be trusted. And so I've got to put it out there. It's worth answering these questions because I want you to know that I'm not only a man who's willing to go and stand up on the front line and do what has to be done, and I've been there and done that. So I'm not scared of that. As I said, I was awarded the state president was, I was meant to have gone to an award ceremony for, the chief of the defense was to give this award. I never knew about it until 5 years ago. When I wrote my book, someone said, "Oh, why don't you see what medals you were awarded?" So it came as a surprise to me, which is why if you see my book, you'll see it's got MMM, which stands for military merit. So it's a post-nominal award. I can put it like you can put OBE after your name, or you can put MMM after your name if you've been given this award. And I think 1 or 2 guys in my squadron, other than me, got it. So it wasn't like they were handing the shit out like candy. So that's the one thing to say, is that I'm willing. I've been there and I've done it. So when I say I don't think that we should be trying to play war with these psychopaths, it's not because I'm scared of it. Because I know that that's only going to play right into their hands. But if we are going to create something anew, then we need honorable leaders to help show others. Because eventually, as I was saying to Andrea, what I got last year from going out and doing activism in the street, and what I got from Harry's support, because Harry was very supportive, and he did a little video that was, and that kind of made a little mark, put me a little bit on the map, as it were, because I was, I'd been very quiet in 2016, 2017, with having a baby. I just need to put a new charger on. Excuse me a second. Yeah, I'll just plug in here, man. Hey. Yeah, what I got from Harry's support was the opportunity to create like a little bit of a create a name, as it were, because I started to realize that there was no help coming.
There's no insider, QAnon, Donald Trump, all this crap. There is no one coming to help us. We have to help ourselves. And there is so much. There is so much fiddling. There is so much. I don't want to name names here, but we know who I'm talking about. And there's names that I don't even know of, that are people who are infesting or infecting this awakening, or whatever you want to call it. That's the truth. I realized that when I found flat Earth, when I did the DMT, when I realized that we are much closer to God than I ever imagined. Of course, I didn't care for God. After the war, I was like, there's no God. How can there be a God in a world that sets children, young men against other young men? When I realized, though, that there is something much more important going on here, and that we need to be higher individuals, I started cleaning myself up, cleaning up my act, becoming a better soul, a better man. And some of you would have heard me joking when I was well, not joking, but actually, one of the things that Harry filmed, Roxanne and Harry actually filmed me in Crystal Palace with a megaphone, and I was, I was trying to catch people's attention. And I was like, porn and this and that, and I think I may mention masturbating. I think I was saying those things because I need people to know that to be all we can be isn't, we're not going to get away with being like the ministers of the church and the ministers of the government, which are the same thing. We genuinely have to be good souls. We have to be good people. Now, I'm not going to try and pretend that I'm perfect, and I don't know that I'll ever be perfect by everybody's standards. But I certainly want to be an honorable, honest man. And I know now that over the years to come, millions of people are going to find their way through flat Earth, hopefully, they will find flat Earth, and they will move through flat Earth and be like, so where to now? Who are we going to look to now to guide us on? And I'm not looking to be like like that kind of prime minister kind of thinking, you know what I mean, like the traditional this thinking of that kind of leader, more just as a kind of soul guide, or a like an honorable human who others can say, yeah, that's kind of someone I can relate to, and two, an idea of how the Most High Creator of this place always intended for us to be, not stuck in the porn and the materialism and so on. So getting back to my point about Sea Oddity, you really set me off on a fantastic line of thought here, my friend. But if I'm to be that I hope to be, and I'm sure many of you feel the same way, that we are on the cusp, we are at that leading edge of something. And that's what I realized actually last year when I went out to the first activism thing that they pulled in Speaker's Corner, and I looked around and I saw how few of us there were, and I realized, oh my gosh, there's not a lot of us. And I'm not very far behind the curve. Sorry to use that phrase, but I'm not very far behind where those around me are. And I don't mean like in all areas, because I'm learning so much from the spiritual, the people that have been doing all their spiritual learnings. I mean, I referenced Mark of Melbourne earlier on. There's people who are deep researchers, and who've been doing great soul work and great, so we're learning from each other. Um, but if I'm to be one of those people that is a beacon, then I have to have my stall set out, and people need to know who I am and what I am. And actually, I'm grateful. It's an amazing kind of universal sleight of hand trick or whatever that got me to write my book. My mother died 2011, motor neuron disease, Lou Gehrig's if you're in America, ALS. And that set me off. It kind of gave me a right kick up the backside, and set me off on a path that made me realize that in 2012 I joined a Facebook group that was a military Facebook group, like the old soldiers military Facebook group. And I realized quite quickly that there wasn't a lot known about the battles that I'd been in, and I hadn't. Once I walked away from my national service, I never looked back at it at all. I refused to go to any further events, or I was meant to do. You're meant to do sort of 1 month or a few weeks every year of continued training. I absolutely refused any of that shit. But I ended up coming across a photograph of this massive crater in the ground, and one of the rattles, the vehicle that I've got one. 1 second. A miniature. 1 sec. Yeah, sorry about that. So I can't find the model. I'm not sure where it is, but here's a pal did a drawing for me, actually, a pencil drawing. That's it. That's the gun up front. You see? And those are the wheels that I was talking about earlier on. And the crew commander is up there where that machine gun is, the 7.62 Browning. And the driver's up front there in the nose. Yeah, and all the boys that would sit in the back, where we didn't have any in the back of ours. And just as a sense of scale, if you've ever I don't even know if people are here. I could be talking to myself. I haven't been looking at the chat. I assume there's some people here. Oh, it's 33. Fantastic. This is the 90mm shell. Yeah. So obviously, what's sticking out of this is the projectile. That's all missing. Yeah. This is actually one that I took off the battlefield from that battle. So that's a 90mm shell, and just that on its own probably weighs about 5 kilos, just the empty shell. So I come across this photo in Facebook of one of these all blown up, and I happened to be, my life was almost taken in the very incident that photo was depicting. So I wrote a little story about it on Facebook, and people were like gobsmacked. What? They hadn't heard much of that kind of up close stuff, and we were bombed by these Russian planes, and we could see the pilots on that day, and they were that close to us, and they dropped these 1,000-pound bombs on us. I watched these 1,000-pound bombs coming down at me, and I won't go into how I managed to not die, but a friend died, and another friend, he lost his leg. and his vehicle, and their vehicle, Wayne's vehicle, he was a crew commander. He's psychologically scarred, but his vehicle was just totally destroyed. And I wrote the story about how that happened. And so people said, "Oh, what else can you tell us?" So I wrote a brief sort of story about this massive battle, this 3rd of October battle, where, as I say, historians all acknowledge that we destroyed a brigade, much stronger, much bigger unit than mine. I was part of a battalion, which is 1/3 of a brigade. And our battalion didn't have any tanks. We were promised in training that we would never have to fight tanks because our 90mm cannon wasn't really suited for anti-tank work. But on this day, we came up against 3 squadrons of tanks in total. And I claim my gunner took out 3 tanks that day. And so that sort of started me writing, and I wrote like a blog, and I had like 5,000 views in like 3 weeks. So with that, I went to a publisher, a UK publisher, like Hellion, claims to be like England's premier like military publisher. So I sent my story to him, and he was like, yeah, okay, we can do a thing. You don't get very much money for it, so so I ended up writing my story, and I'm kind of I'm grateful for it, because I would never have written it after I found out about flat Earth, or even 9/11. I don't know. I think because once I found out about 9/11, it really spun my world out of control. Because I'm too honest, or I'm too forthright, so I can't hide the truth very well. So I ended up telling the story. I mean, I ended up I told the story, but before I found out really how the world started, find out how the world really works. But I'm grateful that I did tell the story, because what flat Earth, or what humanity does need, is decent leadership. And again, I don't mean that in a way of trying to replace Tony B. Liar or Tony Blair type characters. I don't see how that works. I don't see that we can go, okay, well, here's 3 or 4 flat earthers who are, like the right kind of character. Why don't we try and get them in positions of parliament? My friend Steve Wide Awake, he said that to me before, and I can't see how that will work. You can't court this beast. You can't try and play nice and go, okay, well, let me see if I can change it from the inside. Let me go and become a policeman and make, or a lawmaker. Let me go and study law and try and alter the law from the inside, like Anthony Riley is trying to do. Hey, the sleeping warrior. He thinks that he can change the education system by winning a few court cases or something like that. That's not going to happen. This system is all about maintaining its levers of power and control, and absolutely screwing humanity in the way that it has continued to do. So that's not the kind of role that I see for myself. But I do see myself now as having some, and I never would have said this a few years ago, even a year ago. But after going to the Flat Earth thing last year, starting to do the activism, I realized that I do have a role to play. I didn't even want to be a teacher of people. I was kind of bought out. There wasn't much for me. I didn't know where my life was leading. But now I am a teacher, and now I am a leader, and I want to be an honorable leader, and I need to have my stuff out there, and I need for people to know that I'm not a pussy. I've been through actual war. There's not many of the loudmouth, noisy boys that are out in Flat Earth that have done anything like what I've done. In fact, most of the military men I've ever met are in awe of what I've done. Because most military boys who love their military, they don't get to do that sort of shit. The fact that I ended up being cannon fodder, on the front line is just a quirk of curious bloody universal fate. And that I got to write my book and have it published here in the UK. Oh, an interesting aside comes to mind. I got offered a publishing deal by a South African company called Random House, quite well known actually around the world if you're into books. And they were going to publish my book the next year, at the end of the next year, 2015. And I went to my publisher and said, "Look, I've got this company, I've got Random Strike are willing to, publish my book." But then there was a little bit of like toing and froing about commissions and so on for him. Right? It had nothing to do with me. I wasn't really that interested in the money aspect of it. I was more interested in having the story told for the sake of those who've done their service, done their time. But we'd got through to a point where, I probably got the email where they wrote to me and said, "Yep, we're going to publish your book, and we're in a kind of hurry to do it." And because I already had it had been typeset and so on, it shouldn't have been too difficult. But right then, Penguin Books came and bought out Random House and cancelled the publishing thing, and because I don't think it quite met with their political agenda. This white boy story, and also actually now that I know what I know, I won't go too much more into that. The point is that we need to be decent leaders of whatever's coming. I don't know what's coming, but there are going to be people who need our leadership and our guidance, and I need to learn more and be more so that I can represent humanity in the best way that I can. How's that? It took me about half an hour to answer that question. Yeah. Sparky's asked, did writing a story help get it out there and off your chest somewhat? Yeah. Actually, a historian came and wrote another book called, you can look this up, it's called Rattles on the Lomba. The name of this vehicle is a rattle. This is called a rattle. And a rattle in English is honey badger. A honey badger is a vicious animal. This is a vicious fighting machine. And it did really well in that context. But yeah, there has been at least one more book written as a consequence of that. The author of the book relied very heavily, in part, on my book. It helped me deal with a lot of demons, Sparky. I can tell the story without much, as you can tell, without too much emotion. But Andrea will tell you that when I wrote the book in 3 2-month segments, actually, over the course of almost a year. Yeah, about that. And in each of those 3 segments, I would write sections of the book with water just running out of my face, just sobbing my fucking heart out. The emotion of it was unbelievable. Just I'd sit here and be writing. I was in this house. I'd be writing and crying and crying and crying. It just, there was a lot of stuff in there. And then I think another important part, truthfully, is that to get a little bit of recognition. For one thing, my lieutenant, back in the day, so on the 3rd of October, he and I both got wounded, but he was CASEVAC'd, casualty evacuation. And so from then on, I was, in my mind anyway, I was the commanding. I was the commanding officer of the 4 vehicles. You see, so in a squadron, there's 12 vehicles broken up into 3 troops, and each troop has got 4 vehicles. And I was second in command of those 4 vehicles. But when the lieutenant got wounded, I was in charge of the vehicles. Now, it turns out that a few weeks later, there was a replacement to him that came. But in my mind, he never came. I didn't even know about that. When I wrote the book, I didn't know about it. It was only afterwards I found out that that was the case. But in my mind, I was in charge of the troop. These were my lads. And but when he went back home and had a little kissing session with my girlfriend while I was up in the war. That fucked me up pretty badly when I found out about that. But anyway, he told me that I'd been nominated. His words were, "You've been nominated for the State President's Award for bravery for your actions on that day." Maybe I saved his life. I don't know. But so I was told that. But as I said, it was only after I started writing the book that someone suggested that you should apply and see whether you got any medals. I mean, you're going to get medals anyway. You get a for going into a combat situation, you get a certain medal and this and that. But it was only when I applied for the medals that I found out that I'd been awarded this additional kind of bravery thing. And so for my entire adult life, I had labored under this idea that I should have been awarded something because I knew what I'd done in combat. So to have that recognition, and then to have the recognition of people when because actually for a little while there, I was a bit of a hero. In 2014, I was a bit of a hero, and I was invited in May, I think, of 2015 to be the guest speaker at the premier military unit in South Africa's their kind of annual event. They invited me to come and be their speaker. And funnily enough, that's when I ran into this old pal who gave me the DMT. So for a short time there, I was so I got quite a lot of kudos, belatedly, 25 years after the fact, or whatever, 30 years after the fact. I got quite a lot of kudos. And I mean, the guy who writes on the back of my book was second in charge of the army. On the back sleeve of my book, he was, senior dude. And this is a guy who'd write to me, and I was getting invitations to this, that, and the rest. But then I started talking about 9/11, which was quite bad. And then I found the flat earth. And now none of them talk to me. Almost none of them talk to me now. So, talk about throwing shit away and making certain sacrifices and stuff like that. That's one of those things I've had to come to terms with. Well, not come to terms with, but it is just one of the realities of this journey, isn't it? It's that it's going to make you unpopular. So in a very short space of time, I went from an unknown to, wow, people are talking about this story and this book and blah, 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 patting me on the back, and my family are proud of me and so on. And now I'm I'm dumb, I'm stupid, people don't want to hear me, what I have to say. This has turned into a bit of a counseling session for me. thinking also having experienced so much in life on different aspects and perspectives must help forge leadership as one can only appreciate properly from experience. Yes, yes, exactly right. And I think that's why I'm grateful for having written a book, actually, because if I'd not written a book, I probably wouldn't have just had this conversation that I had, because no one would really take it. It's one of those things that I'd stopped. People who worked with me for years probably didn't know I'd been in the army or had been in war, because I'd stopped talking about it, you know, and because people aren't interested, actually, and also people don't really believe it. It sounds a little bit kind of fanciful, really. Um, so you know, but it's there, and even those people who dislike me for talking, even those, in flat Earth, there are people who will remain nameless, but who are actively working to knock us down, and there's nothing they can there's nothing they can do about that. The fact is that I do have a military background, not that I chose it. It was forced on me, and the fact is that I've proven myself in battle. Not that I'm looking to go back to battle like that, but I have those credentials, and I'm willing to use them to demonstrate that I am a leadership capability. Hello, darling. I'm just chatting to the chat room. Hmm. Oh, it's Lou who's here. Hi, Lou. What's that, darling? Wow. Hi, Lou. You and I do need to talk, hey? Hi, Gracie. Thank you, Rudy. Oh, Arhus for Freedom. I hope I pronounced that right. What's my book about? My book's about my national service and being in tank battles and being bombed by Russian planes and stuff like that. Yeah, thanks, Harry. Yeah, Jason's dad was sent to Vietnam at 17. Yeah, I was 17 when I turned up for my national service, but some guy, the Vietnam story is an ugly one, and there are guys in the South African story that have more gruesome stories than mine, because mine was a little bit at arm's length fighting. Because we were in quite dense bush, we were quite close quarters combat, but not quite the same as what the Vietnam War and also some of the infantry boys in the South African sort of border war, where they were fighting against the South West African People's Organization. I mean, that whole thing about Namibia being ceded to the Germans and the Germans losing it in World War One and the British giving it to South Africa to look after, it's all part of this grand stage. And my book, by the way, is called Battle on the Lomba, if anyone's interested, just from a reference point of view. It's called Battle on the Lomba. Lomba is the name of a river, and we spent about 6 weeks fighting battles around that river, and then we pushed on after the 3rd of October, destroying this brigade. 47th Brigade has come back to me now. We pushed on and ended up near a town called Quito Carnaval. And Quito Carnaval, according to Nelson Mandela, was the death of apartheid. So it's an interesting, there's an interesting historic twist about that. And all the history was focused on what happened at Quito Carnaval, but not at what happened prior to that, because prior to that, there were 4 brigades down on this river, and we beat up one of them that one day, and we'd had battles with some of the others, but we beat up one, and because we beat them up so badly, they sort of hightailed it back over 10,000 troops in total, hightailed it back to this town called Quito Carnaval, where we began a siege, and my national service ended, and as I said, I shut the door on that. But it became the sort of apparently the end of the apartheid era. So historically, it's important, and they write the history. They wrote the history as though the white South African government or the white South African army was beaten at Quito Carnaval. And so that was, I think, probably what started me thinking, shit, there's something misplaced here, because, in my experience, we were so much better trained, so much, we may not have had the newest equipment, like the Russians had been sending some new equipment out to the Angolans, but we were far better military units, and but the history has been written such that that's the end of apartheid. So it's actually historically it's quite interesting, quite significant. I'm sorry for your dad's situation there, Jason, and you know this is it's indicative of the sorts of trauma that our world has sought to wreak havoc. And of course, in Africa, they have done so much of that. I mean, this is the imperialist Phoenician or whatever kind of thing. They've done this on purpose, and maybe it's because Mount Meru is there. That's what all of this is about. I mean, someone started me talking about this a while ago, but obviously we're on this journey to something wonderful, but we do want to try and find what truth we can along this way. And I think that Mount Meru may be in Africa, and that the Antarctic Rim is actually just, north of Scandinavia and Canada and Russia. Yeah, you look at Africa; it's all being messed up on purpose. We are not many now, and I want to be one of those who people can rely on as an honorable soul, and someone who's not working for the system, as it were. Some people have tried to infer that because I have military time, that I'm a government agent, because there's some photos of me 2014 after I published the book. I went to a few events. I got encouraged to join the South African Legion here in London, and I went along to a few events, and there's some photos of me with Britain's the Victoria Cross, which is the highest decoration you get here. This photo of me with a lad who won a Victoria Cross. So it looks like I'm sort of, in the current times, I'm sort of all in with it, as it were. There's a photo of me giving a book to Harry, the Prince dude. All this stuff, which is, it really, all of that came as a consequence of me all of a sudden getting this kind of kudos, having written a book, but I mean, I didn't know squat. As I said, I did the DMT in 2015, and that was the moment in which I realized that I knew nothing, and everything I'd ever learned, everything I'd ever done, had not prepared me for that knowledge, and even then I didn't realize that it was such a grand deception against us. It was only after the flat earth started sinking into my brain, middle of 2015, towards the end of 2015, I was like, it's all a scam, and there's no one in authority that we can trust. So we have to be our own authority, and we have to learn to trust one another, which is why I've been at pains to where I've extended myself to put my family out a little bit on the, in the, as a word, is to show that I'm just a real dude. I'm just a real human being looking to do the best that I can. No agenda other than what is the truth, and what are we, and because there's a lot of bland people in flat Earth. There's a lot of people who are not willing to put themselves out there, and I understand why some may not, because of the fear of the system and what have you. But like I said, if you heard me earlier on, on the 3rd of October, facing tanks down, I was just going forward, pushing my driver to go forward and hit them head on. And we know now that there is no real death. That I'm here for my family and my new little boy and all of that sort of thing, and I plan to be here for many, many years to come. But I'm not going to cower. But I'm all in. I'm all in. This is not for the faint of heart, and it's not for the bland. This is full multicolor life, and we need to be willing to go and live it, learn it, and be the best that we can be. All of that, we need to be that. The high excellence, that your religious leaders tell you, even though they're not themselves, and your political leaders tell you, even though they're far from that themselves, is what we need to be, but not because they've told us that, but because it's our proper birthright before we had it stolen from us. And how it all plays out in the end, I have no idea now. So all I can do is put my best foot forward, be honorable, honest, sincere, above board, and put it all out there and let people see. Yeah. Jason Hand, about your dad and the Vietnam thing, I mean, well, one of the things I used to, actually, I belonged to a Facebook military veterans, American veterans Facebook group for a while. And, I try to tell them a little bit about the truth and stuff. They don't want to know. People that are so bought up. This is not about your dad at all, but, people that are so bought into their system, and we're a veteran and we're patriots and all that sort of thing. They're some of the most lost people because they're so bought into, like that military, the commander of my unit, they're just doing what they've been taught to do. But for me, I thought, shit, this will liberate people, people that have been damaged. This will liberate them if you know the truth. That's what I was hoping for. Anyway, we don't give up hope, and I hope your dad finds his way through that, because it is wrong. But people have been tortured in so many different ways. It's just one of the unfortunate sort of kind of frontline experiences. Thanks, Luke Kennedy. There's a few other comments. I won't keep you guys much longer. I'm starting to lose the audience, as it were. Anyway, we've dropped from 33 to 28. So, but it's all good. I've had a good session here. It's over 2 hours long. Luke's asked, are there any previous videos where I talk about it? Do you mean, do I talk about the war or something else? Because tonight I was talking about I'm really keen to talk about the this theory of Mount Meru being in the center of Africa, in Africa, because there's a tribe called the Meru, and when you look into their oral history, it's like the Old Testament revisited. And there's a Mount Meru next to Kilimanjaro, and it's got a bloody huge crater that, if you were a simple person back in the day, 1,000 years ago, you would have gone, that's like a hole in the earth. And that Antarctica is actually, then Antarctica is sort of just above us in Europe and America and Russia. The ring, the top of the ring, is just there. I have briefly spoken about my war experience, but never at the length that I have tonight. And it all started because Oddity asked me if I'd ever killed anyone. So you can go back and listen to that. I've spoken probably very long. Oh man, Jason, my dad never truly came home yet. He told me the truth of the war and kept the military from taking me. Well, I'm glad that he kept the military from taking you, my friend. My mom said that she never got her son back, and so I honor her when I wrote my book, because a mother wrote to me after we published the book, and she said, "Now I understand my son. Now I've read your book." I actually have in my loft. I have about 80 or 100 copies of my book. I bought a job lot from the publisher, thinking there'll be book launches, there'll be other book events, and people were like British military dudes were asking me to come to do talks and stuff like that. And then of course I found 9/11 and Flat Earth, and of course they don't want to talk to me anymore. So I got all these books, and I was thinking like I may never get rid of them because I just people don't want to. People who love their military do not want to know that the entire edifice of their control system is a complete sham. Hey man, so it goes. Yeah. Hey, Lee. Honesty will bring answers. Flat Earth British sub. On the 24th, which is just the other day, when my boy turned 2, was 1 year since I met you. But I know that because my father-in-law died that day, and that was the day I was in hospital looking out for him that night. I was doing the late night bedside watch for my father-in-law Roy. So I met you that day on the 24th, a year ago, and you inspired me to make this channel. Well, I was kind of thinking about it, but you were like, "Do it, man." Yeah, I'm grateful, and I'm grateful for all your contributions, because you were my first subscriber, mate, and you've been a positive influence, and I love your way of thinking. Although I can't listen to all of your long Vanna vlogs, I do enjoy them, and I want you to come for dinner as soon as you can. DMT, the spirit molecule, Marco Melbourne. Yeah, I watched the spirit molecule before I took the DMT, but it didn't prepare me really for the experience. I do want to say, as I'm talking about DMT, that there's a guy called Spark who reminds me that because my religious indoctrination as a child, all of that kind of mind altering stuff, hallucinatory stuff was like off the menu. But when I traveled in America in 1988, not directly, but a few months after the army, I ended up traveling, and I ended up doing like 30 states of America, and from coast to coast and back again, road trip. And I did mushrooms, magic mushrooms in a few places, Detroit and Wisconsin, and that showed me the stuff. Like I was like, whoa, there's things going on that we've not been taught about. So that was already a bit of an eye opener. But nothing prepared me for the DMT. But the DMT was very frightening. And when I did it, the first time, um, obviously it changed the paradigm for me and stuff. But I didn't want to do it again. My friend Joey, this Jewish chap that I don't talk to anymore because I won't support Israel. He doesn't want to know me. He wanted me. He was like, "Come on, do it again." So actually, I did it again that evening, after much cajoling, and then I didn't touch it for 3 years. And then some months ago, I had an opportunity to do it via the Changa, which is a form of the DMT. And I got a very strong kind of message not to come here, not to go there again. Pardon me. So at the moment, I treat that with with high. So, and my advice to all of you is to treat it with reverence. It's not something that you do for fun. I know that there is a growing kind of like party atmosphere around it and stuff like that, and it is not that. The Chinese say that the best way to do it is to create an overload of DMT in your pineal gland by spending a week in a dark room. You can look into that. Rather than causing your body to release the DMT, which is what happens when you die, is that the DMT is released. And so it might be the case that we only have a certain amount of DMT and you shouldn't be doing it very much. And also, it may be the case that once you've seen what you need to see while you're alive, you don't need to go back and see it again. So my last experience with the DMT has kind of made me go, shush. Don't be in any hurry to do it again. Perhaps it'll call me again. I don't know, but I'm just offering that to you as a kind of cautionary note. One of the first things I said when I did the DMT the first time was that everybody over the age of 16 should know about it. Because that was the first thing I said. I was like, whoa, it's true, there is a God. That was the first thing I said after 5 minutes, my 5-minute DMT experience, was that. And my dying mother couldn't get me to accept that there was a God. But 5 minutes after 5 minutes of DMT experience, and the first thing was, oh my God, it's true. Right, there's a God. There is something else, something higher, and then I said, wow, everybody should know that this is here, this exists, and that everybody over the age of 16 or at 16 should be offered it as an opportunity to see, because then there'd be no question. I was one of them. All these idiots walking around with their agnostic, atheistic kind of view of the world they'd be a thing of the past. We'd be working towards something much more spiritual, something much higher, if people were given that. But then they would probably be less likely to believe in spinning balls out in space, and certainly couldn't believe in a Big Bang after you've done DMT. Well, there might be some people who still do, but I find that hard to understand. So, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, created in the brain, or created in all living things, as I understand it, but not to be taken lightly. It is like a conversation with the Most High, perhaps, and if you go in deep enough, if you go in right, some people don't get in very far, but I think I got in fairly deep. Not as deep as some people go, because some people do it like a dozen times or whatever, and they're experienced at it and so on. And the ayahuasca, the 6 hour journey is perhaps sometimes much more, a longer conversation and a more intense experience. But we are commanded to test all things, and so I'm not encouraging you to do it. I'm not discouraging. I'm just telling you how it is for me. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, I realize saying these molecules fit like gloves to our bodies. We are meant to experience them with respect. Yeah. Yeah, do it in the right situations, and it has to be in the right situation, and you need to be in the right environment. You need to be prepared for it. There will be such cases where people have had a little bit of a bad time because they haven't kind of got themselves right. But the first 30 seconds for me was some of the most frightening moments of my entire life. It was horrific. It was like I felt like I was dealing with all of the world's pain in that moment, and hurt. Sometimes I thought maybe was my own pain, my own life pain that I was purging. But that's what it felt like. In about 30 seconds, I went through like hell, horror, and then it calmed down, and I was in this totally immersed in it, in love, and then everything that I could see around me was reduced from material to wave, and it was for me the end of particle physics, because I saw everything is connected and everything is electrical pulsing light, and there was just like this universal hum. Everything was in a color. It wasn't like anything was weird, like on an acid or on mushrooms, where you got all the psychedelic strangeness. Everything was fractal, but it wasn't like things were doing weird shit. The trees still looked like trees, but it was just that they were just pulsing energy rather than wood or leaves. It was just energy. So it was a huge, huge step for me along this journey of awakening. Hey, Authentic Intent. Josh, how nice to have you. I'm sorry I missed your live earlier. You've pulled some really good stuff out at the lake there lately, and I'm liking your approach, my friend. It's I think we're all looking to raise our game, and as we go along this road, wherever it might lead. But you are definitely one of the inspirations for me when it comes to the activism, for sure. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, Luke, you'll do it when the time is right. Yeah, when the time is right, and it, and I think for me, it came to me at a time. I mean, I was ignorant to it. I didn't know. I'd never even heard of DMT, man. I knew nothing. I was like a child. I know I was 46, and at the time, I think, and I have said this many times, that despite being a published author and having lived all the things, 2 children at that time, and gone through the various things of my life, as we all do, I knew nothing at that point, up until that point, because I was very much constrained by the materialist way of things that we all come through. So, and I say that to people not to be unkind, just to kind of point them in the direction to say, shit, really, you know nothing. I knew nothing about our world, and thankfully, I've had time to do an awful lot of research on that, and so much more makes sense to me now, and I'm I know that particle physics, for example, is just part of our control system, and they need the little electrons going around atoms because it makes it look like a sun with Uranus and Mars and Saturn and all that going around it. It's all crap. Live in the chat though, and really nice to have you here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Luck dropped you in the middle of this community. That's interesting, Jason. Yeah. Well, I don't know about luck. I think that these things are all meant and designed. I've been thinking about this a bit lately. Like when I was a youngster, 6, 7 years old, I was crying with my mother, saying, "This can't be it. This can't be all that there is." But she had nothing. She had, we were going to church and all that, but that doesn't. If you're a thinker, that's not enough. As I said, I could see that they were trying to tell us the Earth was flat in the Bible, but that didn't make sense. It didn't jive with science, and I was a believer in science. So no, I think that I've been on this path all my life without realizing it, and I suspect that most of us have been too. They use this term NPC, non-player characters, quite a lot now. I have mixed feelings about that, but I understand it. I suspect that the majority of folks that are here are not NPCs, and we're never designed to be NPCs, so I don't know if it's luck. I think there's a hand of design, Jason. And here's a thought from me, my friend, and that is that my family, in the main, would fall into that NPC character kind of, my sisters and my dad, and maybe my mom if she was still alive. But perhaps we're here to bring our family tree, our family line, our karmic family line up and bring us all up. So there only needs to be a representative of each line. And in the great design of things, hundreds, thousands of years ago, whatever, maybe this was always intended, that there would be a member of the line who would be the torchbearer and who would carry things on for the family. So when we think about trying to wake up the whole world, we may be setting ourselves up with a task that's unnecessary, because we may only need to bring some of us to a certain place, a certain point, a certain gnosis, a certain insight, a certain connection to the creation, to the creator, in order to achieve whatever's designed. I mean, all things are meant, aren't they? Or all things are happening, and whatever's coming down the pipeline, whatever turbulence is coming, it's all in a way, it's all predestined. The names and the faces of the individual characters may arguably be dependent on various factors, but it may also be the case that you were always meant to be that one who brought your family along. And so this isn't by accident, my friend. And I'm not suggesting that here right now is all that it is, because that would be far too grandiose a thing for me to say. Well, I've got so much more still to learn and to contribute and to grow and to commune with others and to learn from others and follow the path and so on. Authentic Intent, Harry, these are people that have been instrumental for me along this path, and I might be instrumental to others, and others are yet to be instrumental for me still to hopefully continue moving up the ladder, as it were, of knowledge and insight and awareness, or whatever it is we're meant to be awakening to. Hey, Richard Lopez, nice to see you, my friend. Very nice to see you. Thanks for coming by. Destiny, Jason, indeed, destiny. We're Destiny's child. But I don't want to, who knows, it's maybe it's like a relay, and we are standing on the shoulders of giants that have walked before us, not only literal giants, but giants of awakening to certain things, and just the fact that we have the internet. To communicate with each other and to learn this stuff is by the grace of God, or by the design of the system. In fact, the system has it needs this internet as much as we do. In fact, it can't help itself but give us the tools that are going to set us free. So some of those people who we might want to spit on because they are part of the system, they've actually put in place the foundations for our knowledge or our ability to do what we're doing. Yeah, the world is a stage. Hey, Martin Lika, oi oi, as you boys say over in Wales. How nice to have you. You're doing amazing work on Tartaria and all of that. I'm sorry I can't follow all of your work, but I look out for the highlights, because there's so much, isn't there? It's like everything else. You need subject matter experts to kind of do their work, to do the thing that they're passionate about, and to use that to kind of edify the entire movement. So like I can write quite well. I mean, that was one of the surprising things that came out to me when obviously got to the point of publishing a book. I can write quite well. So for example, if people said, oh well, you write a book on this subject that I've done some of the research on, or you help me write a book, you see. So I don't need to be the brilliant researcher, Pat. So I have to be something else. So Martin Lika, you're certainly one of those people who's got the juice. But something I was saying earlier on is for me, there are so many interesting subjects. I'm trying to kind of float over the top and not lose myself in any one particular subject, because it's very appealing. I did it a little bit with 9/11 in the beginning. I did so much research on 9/11. It was like, Andrew was like, oh, all you do is talk about 9/11, all you think about 9/11 and so on. And then of course Flat Earth happened to me, and for well over a year, maybe 2 years, it's all I could talk about and think about. And now of course it's a subject I'm extremely passionate about, but I know that I can't get lost there. I can't stay in the Flat Earth kind of pool forever. Whilst I want to be a contributor to it, I can't be just a flat earth guy, because there is so much more, and they want to keep us arguing about models and shapes and so on. And I don't want to be arguing. The model that I'm proposing, that Mount Meru is actually in Africa, at this point in time, it's a fascination. It's interesting. It may be incorrect. I obviously can't know, but and someone said earlier on, it's not the be all and end all of everything. However, I wouldn't have thought about it if I'd just stayed stuck in one particular subject area. So that's just that. It's all fascinating, Harry. It is all fascinating, and I think we are having the most incredible time. And when I see things, like this reality of ours starting to kind of crumble, where people are starting to really lose patience with the Trumps and the Brexits and and the terrible state of things in South Africa. Um, eventually it's hopefully going to be a thing where we've done the work and others can simply come and read the Martin Luther book or the Flat Earth British book on ancient history or something like that, without having to sit through thousands of hours of research as you guys have done. So we're charting, new territory that others will eventually come to. And as I was saying earlier on about how important it has been for me to kind of put myself out there as someone who's got integrity, who's got, who's done certain things and achieved certain things and so on, and so that when people do come into this after running the gauntlet of ridicule and so on, they have people they can decent people that they can kind of resonate with and connect to. Yeah. Pneumatics. Yeah, you guys in the Phoenician thing. I mean, I can't keep up with it. There's so much good information coming out. Yeah, NASA. Oh, so shit. Where we at is important, but what we do is more important. Mark and Melbourne. Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there any other kind of things that I've missed here? I wonder. If you've said, is John Thor here? Oh, hi, John. You John. Here's a thought, because we flat Earth guys, right? We're mostly in this chat room are flat Earth guys, and I mean, we all know that the Earth is flat, but I mean, we're sort of subject matter experts, right, on flat Earth. And this Owen Benjamin thing, now that I see you, because you're very good at turning people's stuff into short videos, and you're getting fantastic traction with that, and I'm pleased for you. The Owen Benjamin thing is an interesting study, because he has like quite a massive following, and I know it's costing him dearly in some ways to come out flat Earth, or rather be poking around flat Earth. You remember how Rob Skiba in 2015 was like, "Oh, is it flat? Isn't it flat?" He spent all of 2015 kind of vacillating over whether the Earth was flat. It was like, "Come on, dude, it's not that hard." Anyway, with Owen Benjamin, right? And I've been watching him on and off over the last few months, and I do find him, like, he's a funny guy, and he's compelling to listen to. A couple of things trouble me with him. One, he came over to England and was hanging out with Tommy Robinson. Okay, so I'm concerned about that white nationalist angle of that, and what that's all about. And when you listen to the guy speak about how, I think he was talking about, and Subtle Infinity was having a bit of a pop now. Subtle Infinity is a guy who I think has a bit of a chip on his shoulder, frankly. But, in some ways, Owen Benjamin offers us something interesting. I'll be with you shortly, darling. I'll be with you shortly. Harry says hi, by the way. Andrew's like, well, why haven't you come to bed yet? This is well past my bedtime. But honesty, table, cards on the table, and so on. I'm a little troubled by what the mainstream is doing with the black v white skinned people. And of course there's also the Muslim question within all of that. But I had a guy, right, this is one time in Speaker's Corner, I was carrying Alexander in front, like in front of me, facing forward, and I had this Hebrew Israelite dude, this black dude, come in my face No, I went and stood where he was, but he was like having such a like he was like so angry with me because I was white. It really took me by surprise. I didn't think that there were black people who were so angry with just like an average white slave like me. So that's got to be a little bit of an alarm call, because there are people who are saying this like Hebrew Israelite, we blacks have been suppressed by you whites for 400 years and all that crap, right? Which really annoys the piss out of me, because it's like, how the frick do you not realize that we are all in the slave camp together? Firstly, so these are people that are buying the white man's history and then turning it back on the white man and saying, you know, the white man's the European version of history. So that's the one thing I will say. So then you've got this Tommy Robinson type of character who, if you American lads don't know who he is, but he is really stoking up the white nationalism, anti-Muslim. Oh, it's not. We don't have a problem with the Muslims. We only have a problem with their grooming gangs, right? I mean, this is the same kind of rhetoric I heard in apartheid South Africa. Remember, I grew up in a racist ideology, but it's kind of, sort of, being flipped both ways. And I see Owen Benjamin saying stuff like, "Oh, black countries need white rulers," kind of stuff. I'm thinking to myself, we know that the entire edifice of this control system is using everybody, playing everybody off against each other. So you have to be fairly new at this not to realize that we are being played against each other, color or religion or whatever. And I think if we're to do anything to be positive, it's going to be to find brotherhood despite skin color and despite religion. Because we're all in this together. We've all been sold a lie, a variety of different lies. So that's the one thing I would say, John. And what I would be interested in your opinion. You don't need to reply now, but I'm interested in that, because if we're promoting guys who are stoking racism, then that's against the creator. That's against, for me, that's against what we're meant to have achieved here, what we're meant to have learned from all of this. Because everything is about divide and conquer, right? So why is Owen Benjamin... I know he's probably quite ignorant, or he's new to, he's not really realized how huge the deception is. He says, he's very anti-Jew, this or whatever, but I'm troubled by that. I'll be honest with you, my friend. I'm a little bit troubled by that. Because surely we're not arguing for more color. Whilst I see the value in, you see, I'm not arguing for multiculturalism. I've been more than happy to push multiculturalism. I've been more than happy to push, homosexuality and those sorts of modern ways of thinking that this is all good and so on. I'm no longer selling all of that stuff anymore. I'll say that. I'm not trying to sell those things. I'm more about men being men, women being women. Let's get off this. Everyone needs to be lesbian and homosexual and multisexual and all this sort of shit. And everybody needs to be encouraged to have a brown or opposite color, partner and all that stuff. I'm not saying that, and I venerate the origins, the tribal color origins and so on. I'm holding those in higher esteem than I ever have. I'm not suggesting people of different colors shouldn't be getting together, but I'm also not encouraging that in my mind. So at the same time as not wanting to encourage or stoke racial tension as such. I'm not trying to be like, oh yeah, it's a multicultural melting pot that Tony Blair and all of them have been trying to push on us. Um, and I'm not against homosexuality, but I'm against a society that's trying to push all the boys to wear pink and grow their hair with ponytails on top and all that crap, right? So, so you know, there's some people have even asked me, oh, so you're going to bring up your boy? What do they call it? Gender neutral. That's crap. That's absolute crap. That's absolute crap. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to go. I'm not going soft on the things that are important. But at the same time, I don't want to be someone who plays into or be part of a movement that plays into more racial tension. I hope that makes sense. So I'm suspicious, or I think, I mean, no, I'm not trying to be negative to Owen Benjamin, because I think that ultimately, eventually, everybody is going to know about the flat Earth, whether or not they cling to their ball or not. Everybody's going to know about it. So I want to be in a position to help people once they kind of come through that gnosis and come to the other side and go, okay, so now what? So I don't hope I'm not confusing you, but I'm just like, what's his angle, and is he actually helping us or the movement of flat Earth if he's coming across all racist? Anyway, that's I should have been following the chat here. But, okay, thanks, John. I believe Owen is naive on some subjects, but means well. I mean, hey, we are all naive on some subjects, and maybe less so now. We've had time to learn so much more about the deceptions that have gone on, and I have to say, give the guy some time, and perhaps he will realize that he's been misled on some of these things. Monica says all the hate makers are not with the real people. I try. I mean, I'm not got it all right yet, but I am trying to be finding a way to love our brothers and sisters, even if they can't see that they've been deceived. But there's deception abounding, and for sure that what the system wants is it wants conflict between religions. I think this is perhaps what these attacks or these fires in the churches and Notre Dame and all of that, these are partly to stoke up those sort of points of tension. And if you look at South Africa as a case in point, then there are, on either side of the color divide, very strong emotions and a murder rate that would stagger most people's minds if they realized how much death is become so commonplace. Everybody knows someone who's been murdered in South Africa. That's not even an exaggeration. That's just a matter of fact. It's almost like, oh yeah, I was robbed at gunpoint yesterday. Oh yeah, well, I was robbed last week. Oh yeah, Joe was robbed a few months ago, and he was shot, killed. That kind of thing, that's pretty commonplace in South Africa now. The murder rate has gone through the roof, under this black ANC government, who are obviously puppets of this system of control. Do you know that South Africa claimed to have 6 nuclear suitcase nuclear bombs? Because we know that nukes are fake, but they were given to them. These fake things were part of some deal with Israel. And this is the story that goes, I became friends with an author who wrote about that. He still believes in nukes, but the nukes were allegedly destroyed by the South African government before the ANC came into power because they couldn't trust them to keep the secret that there are no such thing as nukes. But it's all whoever's running the show now. As I've always said, Mugabe, he was just simply a puppet of the empire. He might have, he gets to slag off the Queen and say they're this, that, and the rest, but actually they're all actors playing their roles, and the South Africans have been messed up. I was so optimistic about. I stood up when Nelson Mandela was let out of prison. I stood up and watching. I was in Cape Town at the time and watching the TV, and my hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I was quite excited about all of that. And when Nelson Mandela visited the Queen here in London, I went down to the Mall and watched him come down the Mall and stuff, and I was very proud because I was a believer back then. In fact, when Nelson Mandela died, I took a drive. I happened to be driving up the coast, and I stopped. Just a week after his funeral, I stopped outside his house in a place called Kunu, and tried to get a look at his where he'd been laid to rest. So I was still believing in all of that stuff back then. But now I know that is an example of what they want to do here. They want to mess us up so much that we hate each other so much that we, so I'm just cautious of taking heroes like Owen Benjamin to heart and going, yeah, this is good for us, because he could always, it's the same as the question mark that Antonio Suberats has raised over a certain Patricia Steer. You've got to ask the question, as I did in a video that I took down, but I asked the question, is Mark Sargent a man? Because, I think if these people are deceivers, what are they doing it for? And are they intending at some point to drop a bomb that makes everybody look super ridiculous? And if you've pinned your colors to that mast, then if Patricia Steer is a bloke who had a sex change operation, I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all if someone does that. I mean, what someone does with their own personal body and their own life is absolutely their own thing. But in something like this, if they're deceiving us, they're doing so with mal intent. Because if you'd had a sex change operation and you learned that the Earth was flat, what would it matter? You'd be like, yep, I've had this and the Earth is flat. That's much more important than whether or not I had a sex change. And so you'd be comfortable saying it. There'd be no question about it. And of course, if Patricia Steer is a female, then Antonia Suberats is the deceiver. Do you see why it kind of it matters? I don't say these things to be offensive so much as, like I've said all along tonight, I've been putting myself out to be honest and forthright, because I think that's what we need in this world. We've had enough deception. Thank you very much. That's all. I just want us to live in a world where people are honorable humans, and it doesn't matter what your gender, your sexual preferences, and so on. It really doesn't matter. In fact, I worked in a gay bar in London for 4 months. A pal organised me a job when I first got here, and as I said, I'd worked in a very rough, very, very rough nightclub in Cape Town. I permanently damaged my hands. I did so much fighting in that nightclub. So I got this job in London at a pub, and the first night I turned up, I walked in and I was like, there's no girls here. And there were 2 blokes kissing in the corner. So that was my intro to it. And I left the job because the owners of the pub or the landlord of the pub were constantly trying to get a hold of my dick. So but I don't have a problem with people being whatever they want to be. It's just be upfront about it. Hey? Be honest about it, especially here. So, oh yeah, Martin. Yeah. Hey, Martin. That was. I don't want to belabor this point here. Because I know you, Martin. I was watching you back in 2015 when that whole Antonio Subrats thing went down, and I wasn't sure what to make of all of that. I know you were very vexed by all of that, so I don't mean to drag you into this conversation, mate. It's in some ways it is water under the bridge. However, and actually in my heart I know that I know that what's happening is meant to have happened. So I know that in saying some of these things, I'm kind of possibly harpooning my invitation to go be a speaker at the English, the conference, the Flat Earth conference later this year, because I think there is a degree of honesty that isn't even tolerable to a Flat Earth conference. But I can't help myself but say what I'm thinking. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So you saying Anthony talking bollocks? Why would he do that though? Why would he do that? He's made such a thing about it. And I kind of I switched off after a few days of it back into when it was 2015 or early 2016. I can't remember when he started talking about it. Why would he do that? Is he like, what's the word, a narcissist? Why would someone do that? Why would someone make up a lie like that? And he's got quite a brilliant mind, doesn't he? So and he's put all this work in on his map and all this sort of stuff, and it's like, oh, so why would you do that? Why is he a deceiver too? But again, I want we know that all of this has to be, and it doesn't. In a way, if it distracts people or it doesn't draw people in, it's because they were never meant to be drawn in, and they were meant to find the stuff. And same with Owen Benjamin, like he will bring in a huge audience, as it were, a huge number of people who will hear about this. And it's the same with this article we did for The Guardian, that Roxanne did for The Guardian. I saw it in my suggestions feed this morning. It has 600,000 views, and I know that maybe 90%, 95% of the people may not do anything with it, but cheapers, just 5% of that number or 10% of that number is a huge boost to people finding about this truth. So even if they're slagging you off, even if like the National Geographic article, it's got like millions of views, and they're trying to take the piss out of it, trying to make people. But surely that's gonna bring lots of people in. So. So Steve's got something to say on Owen Benjamin. I can't but help myself. He's a Hollywood shill, as the song Hotel California says. You can check out, but you can never leave. Well, yeah, I mean, you might be right that he's a Hollywood shill, but you have to say that if he's getting people to think about flat Earth that would never have thought about it, then he's doing sort of. And here's a thought. This is for me and you. And that is that if we vexate ourselves over that, that's sometimes I've thought about, oh, what if Antonio Subrats is making this all up? And, or even that here's a thought. What if she, Patricia Steer, and Antonio Subrats were both government shills? Yeah? And the idea was they got together and they said, right, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with a story that is like that Mark Sargent sex tape that came out after the first meetup they had in America. That's sort of like fodder for the people who like their tabloid kind of stuff, and that it keeps people jabbering about nonsense rather than focusing on themselves and on their heart and so on. And I think that's maybe something that I should keep it to my heart, which is that we should be we should be um, um, trying to stay above all of that stuff, because if people are going to find out one way or another, then they're going to find out, whether or not it's however, and we shouldn't be drawn into the kind of freak show. If there's a freak show going on, we shouldn't really be trying to get drawn into that. So, and I guess this was sparked by the whole Owen Benjamin thing, and what people thought about his sort of go on it. I mean, credit to the guy. He's trying to set up a homestead for him and his family, and I wish I was in a position to do that for my family now. So that seems to be a pretty good thing, that he's taking that kind of a path. But yeah, there's a kind of racist angle that I feel a little uncomfortable with, and I'm concerned that the system is continuing to try and push people to have sort of racist agendas and racist views about one another. So that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, the dialectic, exactly. Create a dialectic. Hey, Dave, Zoom Truth, nice to see you. Yeah. Yeah, Zoom's a dynamo there in New York. Owen was pushing the limo crash as real. Oops. The limo crash. Limo crash. Oh, that's not a story I know about. Yeah, well, just I guess it's worth a word to the wise is that sometimes that it takes a spoonful of sugar to get the medicine to go down. And I think again the good news is that he must be bringing a lot of traffic into the flat earth. Something though that I think though the problem is when the problem is when they not the problem, but the reality is that they will corral people and they will hold them in their like little entertainment bubble for long enough to do whatever they need to do, because hey, who knows how much time we have for all of this to unfold. So, but then again, if you are designed to be one of those people who can see through that and move past that, then maybe you're going to be one of those people. And if this humanity is meant to have some kind of conflagration between the color groups or the religious groups, then that has been set in place hundreds of years ago, and it is not going to be changed by a few of us in a chat room. It is going to be what it's going to be. But if you're wise to it, then you'll hopefully be able to protect yourself and your family from getting drawn too deeply into things that are going to rob your soul of something. I've said this before and I'll say it again. What if there's a time when the wind changes direction, and if your heart's in the right place, then some people would suggest this is a recycling. Barnabas Nagy said something the other day that was like, whoa. what we're encouraged to go to the light when we die. And he was suggesting, and others have said this, that actually it's the dark that we should be going back to, not the light. The light is the recycle, the rewash program, and you just keep coming back here. And so, you know, we I think we're wanting to make the right choices, and if we get drawn into the emotional stuff, whether someone's got a sex change or someone's lied about this, or we're wanting to squabble over who's the biggest slave, who's been enslaved the longest, or whatever, then we're never going to make the right choices going forward. And that's what the system wants to hold your mind so that you never make the right choices. Doesn't that make sense? Yeah. Oh, Eric DeBay knows who I am. That's 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 awesome. Yeah, well, Zoom just said that he saw a video of Eric DeBay. What did he say? I saw a video of Eric DeBay picking on you, and you really like Eric, but he's wrong on this one. Well, he might not be. I mean, but if you go back and listen to the first, maybe not the first half hour, but after that, Oddity asked me about if I'd ever killed anyone, even when I was in war, and it sparked off a whole deep kind of pouring out of my some of my story and my truth, and we know that we got to judge a tree by its fruit. And so I'm hoping that anybody who's meant to hear that my fruit is healthy, they will see that and hear that from my own testimony and from my words and my my soul here. It's fascinating that Eric DeBay. Someone else mentioned that Richie from Boston had mentioned me as well. I was like, no, that can't be right. So that's, in a way, that's kind of cool, because I'm obviously wow, if Eric DeBay is taking a little pot shot at me, it does bring into question. I don't know why he would say that, or what he would be pot shotting at me about. I mean, I'm not perfect, so and maybe it was to do with my style in the street, because I'm far from the polished debater that some of the street activists are. But I've got a feeling that he's Dubé is in bed with a bloke in the shed, and the bloke in the shed doesn't like me either, simply because, well, I don't know that firsthand, but I think that he has a sock account that he's used to fire at me a few times, called Chiswick. So, and they're so I think that's an interesting tidbit, actually, and all good, because you know what, people who got their heart in the right place, they will find the right people to listen to. And I may not be the right person for everyone, and and Eric DeBay was someone whose information at the beginning was vital to me, to kind of go, yeah, okay, maybe maybe the Earth is flat. Or rather, when I saw the 200 proofs, it was like, yeah, there's enough here for me to go, shit, yeah, I could start talking to other people about this, because I was already fairly certain, I think, but that was good stuff. But I'm not going to take the opportunity here to bash it, Dubai. I think for sure there is a controlled element of what's going on in this flat Earth. He may be part of that control. Cheswick may be part of that control. But on the other hand, it's just like Owen Benjamin. Really, it's any flat earther is a not any flat earther, but I think we are going to we are going to leave people behind. I'm not going to stay in flat Earth forever. It's only a part of the puzzle, and whereas I see people like certain characters are that's the interesting thing for me was that I've noticed along this way is that, like, Dave, you're a guy with all your raw emotion right out there, front and center, and I really admire that. Um, but for me, and I think for you too, there's this transformatory journey that we're on, where we've gone from being, just like every other Joe, consuming of the Sodom and Gomorrah produce of this world. But we've realized that, and I mean, I was anti God, as I said earlier on. I wasn't, I was happy to sort of call myself an atheist, and and I've had to go through huge amounts of trials and tribulations personally to walk this path and to find a higher path to walk. So, and it's caused tumult, hey, in my life and in yours. I can tell, and in others. Whereas there are some people for whom it's like, well, life just goes on as normal. And one of my favorite kind of characters to pick on is Mark Sargent, because I mean he it's almost like he could be a robot, um, um, where it feels almost like he's just been saying exactly the same words for 4 years, and the personal journey. I mean, I haven't watched that documentary or mockumentary that they made, Behind the Curve or whatever. But so there may be stuff in there that you go, okay, well, you can see his personal journey has been X and Y, but for some of these characters, it's like, yep, we know the Earth, we discovered the Earth is flat, and we just carry on life as normal, really, buying lots of expensive clothing, or nothing's really changed. Whereas for many of us, it's been like a huge upset to our world. Things have been turned upside down. People have been, and I'm unable to go back and work in the sort of local government type environment that I was in before. There's no way I could do that. No way I could do that. I mean, this it's just an impossibility for me to pretend that everything's okay. And it's just, it's a flat Earth, so let's carry on and keep drinking and keep partying. Someone who, like, I don't want to name names here, but I've met people who've just carried on partying and drinking alcohol, and nothing has changed. It's like just gone from a globe to a flat Earth, and nothing else seems to matter. Whereas for me, it's like everything matters, and everything is recalibrated on the basis that the entire edifice of control, the war that I went through, the war that Jason Hand's dad went through, all the hardships that our families have been through, the illnesses, the diseases, the whatever the chems are up there, the Masonic. I didn't even know what Freemasonry was before 4 years ago. I didn't even know what Freemasonry was. And now I've got Freemason friends that I call out, and I mean, I'm not so vociferous and so angry with them now because I know how ignorant they are in the main. But for me, it's like I've had to learn to breathe underwater. That's how different the world is for me since I've learned this stuff. But there are people for whom they barely missed a step, and they just carried on with their lives, knowing that everything's a deception. And for me, that's where is the emotional, soul, spiritual growth that should come from such a thing? And in Dubai, you don't I don't really see that. I don't really see that change in him. I remember seeing him right in the beginning and seeing him doing some Wing Chun practice, and I thought, gee, this guy's only just learned how to do that because he's all wobbling all over the place, you know. So, and oh yeah, no, I mean, I did one time upset him because I suggested that he might be, his name Eric, right? So there's a guy called Rick Clay who was who apparently died. I mean, this is what happens to truthers, and they government sponsored truthers die. So maybe it's that, I don't know, but that's interesting. How about that? Hey, we got 33 people watching, which is must mean I'm also a Freemason. Wow, Red Eye, not charged alcohol for 13 years. I can't say the same. It's been a few years, but really I've been actively off the alcohol, like consciously going, pretty much 3 or 4 years I hadn't. It's crazy. It's crazy, yeah, it's crazy, but it's beautiful and crazy at the same time. I mean, it's the most, I was at 46, 47, and it's like just heading for, like most other people, for a bland old finish, as it were. Nothing more to say. But oh my God, we are living in some I mean, we're in a construct of some magnificent proportions and of some amazing thing. I mean, the DMT showed me that, we are something amazing and there's something magical going on here. And we're just finding our way back to that. And with every drop of the bomb, with every turn of the key where Trump does this or the British government does that or whatever, as horrible as some of these things are for individuals involved, it is sort of predestined, and destiny has somehow chosen for some of us to be those people who carry the torch. And I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm not sure exactly where my role will be, but I want to just be present. I want to be clean and ready and present to play my role. I am doing what I'm doing today, and tomorrow we'll see. You're emotionally invested. Well, I can certainly tell that about you, Richard. You're a very passionate contributor to this. But I'm in it, boots and all, and yeah, I don't know where it leads. Yeah. Thanks, Astro. You can. It says you can break the evil system by thinking good and not being a part of the division system. I mean, which is exactly the opposite of everything that they want from us. Hey. So. Hey, Ricardo, how you doing? Thanks for stopping by, mate. Jacinda, what? The new New Zealand Prime Minister? Are you suggesting that's a bloke? There's a lot of female emphasis coming on because I think it's something to do with the rising of the feminine energy, but they're looking to kind of mislead people, by putting these like masculine, feminine. So I don't mean they're all transgender. I just mean, they're wanting to convince people that they've gotten rid of all the bad boys like Trump and Blair and all those warmongering types. As John Smith, Harry being also accused of chivalry. Yeah, well, we all have to have our we all have to have our we all have to have that hit piece or two, and I'm kind of grateful to the people who do hit pieces on me in a way, because there will be those people who laugh and mock and scoff and what have you. That's part of the course. But there will be those few who go, oh, well, I'm looking for someone else to listen to. Let me go and see what this dude's about. And, if people can't see that I'm a sincere dude who's got my little boy in some of my videos, my wife's in some of my videos, I don't think my older children are in any of the videos, but that I'm invested in this in an honest and upfront kind of way. My medicine won't be good for everybody, but there'll be those that it's good for. So, if people are saying my name, people with big platforms like that are saying my name, then, or making shill videos or whatever, then say la vie. Say la vie. Because, that's why I'm putting my fruit out here and people can come and taste it. If it's good for them, it's good for them. If it's not, move on. Michelle Michael Obama. Yeah, I'm quite I think there's a lot of that transsexual thing going on, for sure. I've got no argument with that. And don't worry about it, Harry. Don't worry about it. You are absolutely legit. And of course, I've been in the trenches with you. I've been in the trenches with you. So I can say for absolutely certain that you'd have to be one amazing actor to have put yourself out on the line like that. But it does hurt. I know how it feels to put it out there for humanity and then have members of humanity, apparently all from the same humanity, working against that. But I think about it like this, my friend. I think we are in a world of grand deceptions, and in order for us to make our way through, we have to be willing to run the gauntlet, not only of those who can't see the obvious about flat water and level water and all that, but also it seems that the system is going to want to find ways to hamstring you or me or any of us. Which is why sometimes I think about that sort of Patricia Steer, Antonio Subrat thing is like, how, was that, somehow put in intentionally or otherwise to hamstring people from doing good thinking and from doing that inner work, vexing ourselves over whether this person said this or that person said that. This is the sharpening of the sword. This is the preparation, and we're in early days. I mean, I think that the kind of madding crowd is still yet to kind of build, and we need to be strong in ourselves. I, up until today, was subbed to a channel called Prepper Nurse, dude with a long beard and 100,000 subscribers or something, and he did a live yesterday. I didn't catch it live, but he did a live on is the Earth flat or round? Round, yes, they said round. So I went through the chat, the comments today, and got myself a little bit kind of wound up with the ignorance, but before unsubbing the guy, because he'd obviously done no research. But we need to be able to kind of handle that stuff, and we can't the best thing we can do is have people a little bit like me in war. The reason why we were so much better at war was because we were put through the toughest kind of training. We actually had my commandant before I went into Angola, my commandant had us lie in trenches and shoot at us. They had people come and shoot at us for real as part of our training. Real rounds, real grenades were thrown near us. So we got used to it. So this is about preparing for and being strong for this kind of assault, as it were, from those that we consider to be on our side, as it were, in the flat earth, and those that are obviously incapable of cleansing the brainwash. So this is that, my friends. So in a way, I sort of welcome it, because it's par for the course, and we just need to be able to be doing that inner work, getting strong in ourselves, and knowing who and what we are. It's Tommy here. Yeah. Military cray. You need to go back and listen to my testimony, my friend Dave, because I'm not bigging up the military. Okay, I'm not. I was saying today to Andrea, I said, when I was young, before I was even in high school, I thought there was a certain kind of mind that became a policeman, and a certain kind of mind that became I know I'm generalizing here, so I don't mean to be offensive, but a certain kind of mind that went into the military. Now, I had to go to the military because it was a law, but there is actually a certain kind of mind that enjoys that type of stuff, and that's what this system relies on. It needs 1 or 2 or 3, 4, 5% of people to be of that kind of a mind. And I'm definitely not one of those kind of minds. I'm an outside of the box kind of guy, and I never really fit in the military. In fact, the reason why I was sent to I was on officer training course, and I got kicked off officer training course because a few times I went out AWOL to a casino near my camp, military camp, my training camp. I was at the School of Armor, and so I got thrown off the officer training course and had to satisfy myself with being a non-commissioned officer. And even then, I was seen as such a naughty boy that I was given the worst possible posting, which was this death posting to the border. So. But yeah, you should go back and listen to that, because it's probably the best testimony I've ever given verbally about that time, for sure. No, it's just this. It's this video, mate, Dave. It's just go back 2 hours. So. Yeah. Ricardo says watching Harry speak has also taught me to stay calm. Harry's extremely calm under fire, actually, better than me. Harry is the real deal. Thank you, John Smith Globe Live, for the hard yards. And he was one of the very first out there. So he was breaking fresh ground. Him and actually Dell from beyond the curve, and whatever he thinks of me, and of course our friend Authentic Intent, Josh. These guys were breaking the mold. But no one kind of really caught my attention as much as Harry and Josh, really. Anyway, I'm probably going to have to wrap it up because it's quite late for me. And as much as I'm loving chatting with you guys, I have to keep some for another day. It's nice to see you, Tommy. Thanks for stopping by. Uh, and yeah, hey, Tommy, much love back. Um, oh, Joshua, sorry I didn't catch you, mate. Hope you and your lovely missus are well. Joshua is about to bring a new flat Earth baby onto the plane. Mr. Chesak, yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Ricardo. We will build on this, and I would like to get the technology together eventually so that I could do a sort of hangout, so it's more less of a monologue and more of a conversation with some people. So I really thank you for your attention and time. This has gone on way longer than probably anything else I've done. It started with a short video that was meant to be pointing to Mount Meru in Africa. The Meru tribe is in Africa. There is a Meru mountain next to Kilimanjaro, and if you look at Meru, it has a huge crater inside of it. I know this is like outside of the box thinking, but we have to be prepared to explore the potential misdirection that the AE map is, and the Mark Sargent version that we all learned from the beginning is has potentially, for me, I mean, the sort of snow globe thing, if there's misdirection, then that has to be part of the misdirection, right? But then we all got into, is it all planar, is it a flat roof, and is it IPS extended kind of that thing. But what if it's all much closer to home, and that is all much easier? But obviously, this how compasses work requires an overhaul based on the electromagnetic torus model. And you know what? The truth is in plain sight often, isn't it? And these mountains are big black mountains who for people 1,000 or 2,000 years ago would have been the center of their entire world. So that was really what I wanted to get people thinking about. And a channel by the name of Niven, or a guy by the name of Niven, he's done a little bit more work. So if you ever look at his channel, he's done a little bit of work on that. But I asked him to look at, or he started looking at Kilimanjaro, and it was only because of what he did. I went to look at Google Maps, and I was like, or Google Earth, I was like, hey man, there is a Mount Meru here as well. And I think, if you type Mount Meru into Google, of course it brings up the stuff about it being part of the North Pole. But that's classic misdirection, my friends. So Mount Meru might be right under your noses in Africa. Just up the road from Kilimanjaro. So go and check it out, and check out who the Meru people are, and what their oral traditions are, because it sounds like the Old Testament. And of course, the history we're told at the moment is that the Jews had some involvement with the Meru people, hence their oral tradition sounds like the Old Testament. Well, need I say anymore? Thanks, Sparky Lee, for thank you, and yeah, for attracting the right people in my musings. Good night, people. Take care, love and peace. Harry, lovely to have you, and Astro. Okay. Astro King has a reverse AE map based on the South Pole. Okay. I mean, I would say that it's possible that the whole where's south and north and stuff. Some people have said that South Africa is actually north. Could be. I don't know. I'm not going to go there just yet. I think it's worth exploring. But what if the center of our Earth is actually within one of the land masses, like in Africa, and everything goes around that? I mean, the sun going around the dial and stuff. I don't necessarily buy that either. I don't quite. I'm not claiming I know how the sun works, but I think the Antonio Subaret's idea of how the sun works appeals to my research and my thinking. Um, that it's like a pulse, and it's a coalescence. Other people are saying this too. It's not just him. It's a coalescence of a single point, but it's not like this light that goes around in a circle necessarily. Um, so if we can just set that aside and contemplate that when you look at the Scandinavias and the northern Canadas and the Alaskas and um, um, the tundra, the frozen tundras of Russia in Siberia and so on. Why couldn't these be part of the wall? Because perhaps we can't go any further out from those places either. So that could be the extremities of our ability to travel away from the center. Same with New Zealand, and same with below South America. You know. So that's my bit on that. I'm so grateful for you guys stopping by and giving me your time. I appreciate it very much, and I look forward to chatting to you all again soon.